Welcome! You are listening to the Mantic Universe podcast.
I'm Chris, and as ever, I'm joined by my good friend Clem.
Hi, everyone.
And my good friend Mark.
Hey, everybody.
And joining us, we're very, very lucky today to be joined by Mike Carter.
Hi there.
And Fred in Oslo.
Hello.
And we did have Steve Hildrew in a secret black site, Maison Labs black site, but unfortunately he's not available to join us tonight, so that's a shame. I hope he's fine.
He got to talk a lot last time, though, to be fair, Chris.
It's hard to stop him, to be fair, once you get him on. So let's see what we're talking about today. So welcome in on the menu, which is what we're doing now, dear listener. We'll go through our introductions, Mantic news, our Warpath Firefight, our Warpath Deadzone, our panel lore, which this month will be the Twilight Kin lore, and we'll go through listener questions, and yeah, fantastic. So I just wanted to do a little bit of housekeeping before we started. So dear listener, where you're listening to this, if you enjoy the podcast, please give us 5 stars if you think it deserves it. And if you can even write us a little review, we would greatly appreciate it. We're currently on iTunes. We've currently got 2 written reviews, one of which gave us 5 stars and one gave us 1 star. So, you know, if we could get a few more on there, it would definitely help. Something to do with the algorithm. Obviously, we don't understand it. Next point is competition winner. So we had a competition a couple of months ago for to name a new character in Rob Burman's new book, and I was going to randomise the and thank you everyone for participating and submitting an entry. I was going to randomise it, but I'll be completely honest, I picked the one I liked the most, and the winner was Brandish Truckle by Blake. Is it Shrode or Schroeder? Apologies if I got that wrong. So congratulations, Blake, and I've sent that on to Mr. Burman. So your Brandish Truckle will be in the next book. Congratulations. Great news this week after Steve's persistence with Ronnie. So we have a Mantic web store discount code, which will be good for the next few weeks. So I don't know how long it'll be good for, but at least a couple of weeks. And it's, I don't know if it makes any difference, but all uppercase, Universe 15, as in 1-5. It's 1 per customer, so please make sure you fill your basket up that first time. And I wanted actually, Mark, to just talk a little bit more. So we started doing MUP shorts, but we haven't really explained to the dear listener exactly what that is. So Mark, do you want to just explain a little bit what MUP shorts are and why we're doing them?
Sure, yeah. MUP shorts is something new we're doing here on the show, and it's not 3 hours long. So if you'd like to get your dose of MUP and not have to play it over 3 days, yes, you can do that. So unless you're an Ultra fan, I guess you can do it in a day. So, yeah, Chris and Clem kicked us off from Warhammer World with a quickie, and then Gad and I did a couple. So hopefully you can go check those out. We talk about all the armies, and then we also talk about the campaign that just wrapped up that Mantic ran for Kings of War, so Shadowed Horizons. So yeah, it's pretty cool. So hopefully you'll be enjoying those. People seem to be enjoying them so far, so I'm already lining up a couple more, and yeah, so those will be popping out as, you know, news, reviews, something happens, and you know, we'll try to get those out for you.
What I particularly like, Mark, is so when most people have that conversation about, are there too many armies in Kings of War? Inevitably they're saying, oh, Brotherhood is too similar to Basilia or whatever. And there's Mark going, well, I love all the armies. You know, I wouldn't get rid of any of them.
That is correct. I will love them all. Keep them there. So,
but I think it's, yeah, so there's a, sorry, Mark, don't let me.
I was going to say, if they didn't want the balancing headache, they wouldn't have created all the different armies and things like that. So, you know, I mean, if they didn't want to add a halfling army, they didn't have to. They could have put out Rordia and things would have been just fine. But, you know, they came up with the new fluff, the lore. They put it out. And after reading the Cock 24 lore for the Twilight Kin, I'm wondering when a new army is going to be coming out. So we'll talk about more about that later.
and just to Mark's point about Mupp Shorts, so it's a conversation we've had. It's very much Mark's idea. Obviously, it allows us to be a bit more agile and respond to things a bit quicker. So it's not this massive behemoth that's a monthly commitment. And if we miss a recording date, then it's a big effort with so many people on the call. And the other thing is if you're listening to this and you have a topic you'd like to do as your own Mupp Short, there's absolutely no reason you can't just message us on Facebook and ask, hey, I've had this idea. Would you be interested? Maybe you can borrow myself or Mark or whoever from the main pod and make it happen. So feel free to get in touch. Our email address as well is manticuniversepodcast@gmail.com. So we very much, it can be interviews, it can be, as we say, community episodes. So we really want to sort of democratize this. Is that a word? Yeah. So please feel free to get involved, and very much looking forward to having people's content and ideas and all the rest of it. It's very exciting stuff. And the other thing I've been thinking about, thanks, Glenn. Thanks, buddy. So, dear listener, we all love dice, right? D6s, get over to the Baron of Dice website, and they are, as I described them, the Rolls Royce of dice. And use the store code Mantic Universe with a big M and a big U, if that makes any difference whatsoever, for a massive 5% off your order. And if you're in the market for some lovely STL files, Corvus Terrain have got you covered. Head over to their web store and use the code MUPodcast15. I don't know if it makes any difference, but big M, big U, big P, to get 15% off. Fantastic. Should we move on to Mantic News?
Did you present everyone that has joined us today?
No, I didn't. No.
Why don't you do that now, Chris?
That's a good idea.
At least we got to say hi.
It's more than most people get. So let's. I'll put myself on mute, dear listener. And Mike, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and why you love Mantic so much?
Well, I'm a Pathfinder from the U.S. I've been a Mantic fan, Mantic maniac, Mantiniac. Since before Kings of War came out. I remember seeing Ronnie at, I believe it was Origins, in fact, and he was at the Mantic booth, and he had an Abyssal Dwarf starter army. And I was like, cool, I could use these for Chaos Dwarves for my Warhammer army. So I bought it. Opened up, looked at it. They had some rules in it, and I realized even those rules, this wasn't anywhere near enough to do an army. So the next year when I saw him again, I bought another one. And then I eventually got dissatisfied with GW for multiple reasons we won't go into, and decided, hey, I want to support Mantic, put my money where my mouth is, and became a Pathfinder. And that was 10 years ago.
And Michael is known as the Pathfinder extraordinaire. So
yeah, he's a legend, right?
He's a legend in my mind.
A legend in your own mind, Mark.
That's right, exactly.
I mean, you haven't even mentioned your blog, man.
No, I tried to do a little bit. Yeah, I tried to do a little blog. It's at untilsomebodylosesani.net. A lot of it is model reviews and tournament wrap-ups for the tournaments I run. Occasionally there's some book reviews in it. And
assembly guides as well. They've saved my ass so many times. Thank you.
Yeah, I tried to show you how I failed to put things together right the first time so that you won't have to. I did notice for the new Twilight Kin that Mantic has actually put nice full res pictures of both sides of their sprues on the site, which makes me wonder what I'm going to do now when I get mine here in a couple of weeks.
Mike, legitimately, Clem has mentioned on the pod previously that your guide saved him. I think you were building, or was it a flyer from Firefight or something like that?
I think it was the Hornet. What's its name?
Yeah,
the big flyer.
Exactly.
It was like I can't figure where this part and this part goes. And I think Mark mentioned your blog again because I'd seen it already for the 1,000 points demo armies, because you're also the crazy guy that does demo armies with 10 people at a time when the rest of us do only one at a time. Your instructions really saved me. So thanks again
Thanks. Actually, that was a tricky one. I had to go back and talk to some of the people at Mantic on what a couple of the parts were. I had no idea myself. I know one of them is a hook that goes inside the body of it, where basically the guys would hook their weapons onto it or whatever. And when I saw that, I was like, I have absolutely no idea what this is supposed to be or where it goes. And I talked to Pat, and he said, "Oh yeah, that's what that is." I'm like, "Well, thank you. That's obvious."
Oh yeah, you're filling that gap that Mantic has with the instructions. And yes, they've heard us, but I'll tell you what, absolutely required. Building the Naiad Worm Riders, and I mean everything. Thunder Seers. I mean, if there's a model kit that comes out, I look at it, I'm like, holy crap, where's Mike's blog? So I'm sure he's built it. So
whatever I can get my hands on.
Like a bat sign you can send up. Mike, you're needed.
Whatever I can get my hands on, I'll try to get up there and build, which is actually kind of showing that I've been a little lax in posting for a while because I haven't got anything new in several months since, at least Gen Con.
Fantastic. And then someone, and then finish off the introductions. Someone I was extremely happy to meet at Clash of Kings, and sounds like we shared COVID, is Fred. Hey, Fred.
Yeah, hi. Yeah, it was great to meet you. I mean, Clash of Kings UK is always a great place to meet everyone basically in the community. I'm Fred from Oslo. Did some podcasts back in the day. I'm the lone survivor of the original Giant Dwarf cast. Rest in peace, Lars. Today is actually his date of death, October 14th. So rest in peace, buddy. They don't do that podcast anymore. But I love being involved in the game. I run tournaments here in Norway, at least one annual one, Kings of Oslo. I run in January. So just pretty much try to keep the Kings of War scene running and as vibrant as possible here in Norway, really. And we've been doing that since we started really early. When Kings of War came out, second edition in 2015, we ran our first event in October 2015. So we got a kickstart on that, and I think that's the reason why you can see Kings of War in Norway, but it's much less of it in Sweden and Denmark, for instance. I think it's because they didn't really get a tournament scene going, but we just got that tournament scene going like immediately. So that's really helped to put us on the map, and people know that there is Kings of War going on, at least in Oslo and also in Bergen on the west coast. It's like our two main places of Kings of War. And speaking of Bergen, I know a friend of mine, Jürgen. He is a big fan of a motto that Mark Zelinsky usually says, or at least used to say on the countercharge. And Mark, are you on? If Mark Zelinsky is on, could you tell us what the best color is? What's the best color?
Best color? Oh, for your models?
Yeah.
Finished.
Best
done.
The best color is done. Yeah.
That is right.
That is a motto that many of us have loved to use, and at least Jürgen is using that often to create entire armies in the same time that other people just paint one unit. He churns out an army, and he quotes you saying the best color is done.
There you go. My hero, Jürgen. Way to go, man.
Jürgen from Bergen. Nice.
Yep.
And Fred, how many people do you typically get then for your events and tournaments in Norway?
Well, if it's a smaller one, like a one day or something, we can get like 12, 14 players. Kings of Oslo, last time we were 26 or 28. So it's a fair crowd. Of course, we had some help. We had from England. We had a couple of guys coming over. Todd and Rob were over, and we had a Swedish guy come up. We had a Spanish guy come up, and also people from Bergen and Trondheim. But when we all come together, it's 20 plus. So maybe we'll hit 30 one of these years.
Amazing. And is there anything that can be done? You mentioned a couple of countries that are kind of near to you that don't get such good turnouts. Is there something that could be done to build those communities, do you think?
Well, I had the pleasure of meeting some Swedes at Clash of Kings this year as well, the Lindemans, and I've invited them to come up, of course, and also sent invitations to some of the Danes. I mean, the Danes, to be fair, they actually have been up here to play twice, so it's not like they don't play at all, but maybe they don't have any central locations running tournaments. I know in Sweden there are people playing Kings of War in Sweden, but they're a bit spread out. So every time someone tries to host an event, it seems like it's too far to drive for most people. So it's hard for them to get a centralized location. So yeah, and Denmark maybe the same. I mean, there's a guy Karsten is running things in Copenhagen, so he needs people to maybe drive in and actually visit the Copenhagen tournaments. But I'm hoping one of these years we can get a tournament going in Sweden or Denmark. So that would be fun. I'm sure I would go down, and some of the guys here in Oslo might join. We could be like 4 or 5 maybe going down to Sweden or Denmark for an event. That would be cool.
That's also not far from Berlin, or Frankfurt is also not that far. So,
that is true. That is
like
true. Yeah.
Like
I actually have been looking at a German tournament. I'm mostly keen on if there is a Hamburg tournament that matches my calendar, because that's the shortest drive for me. That's like the first city you hit and you drive south from Denmark, isn't it? But Berlin and such would be a much longer drive.
Yeah, it's a couple more hours, 2 or 3 hours from Hamburg to Berlin. But yeah, I think there is a good community in Hamburg as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure. They have run events. I mean,
I'm
always looking at I am looking at their dates often, actually. It's just that it hasn't clicked yet. It hasn't matched my plans, but I am keeping my eyes out constantly for like Northern European events, and I'm not a stranger to going there. So, I love traveling to tournaments. That's like my main. That's my thing.
I think it's great. It's a good occasion to see different communities and visit a new place a little bit, but yeah, also see different ways of playing the game and having an awesome time. So yeah, it's a good thing to do.
So should we move on to Mantic News?
Do it.
Mantic News. So we don't have much in the notes here, so I'm hoping someone has a better memory than me. So I got a massive box in the post, and it was the terrain crate, and so I got 3 mats. I thought actually I had 6 mats coming, but I think actually I got some last year in a Black Friday sale. I got some other mats, so I only ordered 3, and I got 2 boxes of the sci-fi terrain stuff. And last night, actually, my wife was out for dinner in Frankfurt with some friends, and it was me and the kids on the kitchen table painting the new Mantic sci-fi terrain. We had a lovely old time. Obviously, at the end, I kind of took everything and did a little bit of cleaning up because my son's 3, so you can only expect so much. But I'm really, really, really impressed. Really like it. Did anyone else get some?
Yeah, I got also like 1 mat of the forest stuff, and the 2 terrain crate boxes. I also got trees in them. It's a massive amount of trees, and they look pretty cool. I haven't assembled any of it yet, but I really like it. The other thing that I got is the neoprene templates, like for forests and difficult terrain. And they're maybe a tiny bit small for what I would want, but I really like the idea. And now I want to build 3D toppers, like same shape in 3D to look pretty and not play with a flat table. But at least when a unit enters the forests or the difficult terrain, then whoop, you could remove the 3D topper and have the unit positioned properly, and then there's no question about it.
What will you make that out of, Clem? The topper?
I think I'll just laser cut the same shape in MDF and then go crazy and put some of the trees that we got, or random 3D printed bits.
Clem, you can see the next question coming, can't you?
Yeah, I think I can send you a few of these. I can also probably post the DXF or SVG files on the Facebook group once I clean it up. And that's the beauty of having your own laser cutter. It's easy to make cool stuff. And it actually made me think for the club. I kind of want to buy a full mat and just cut it myself and make my own shapes. Because when you think of it, like you can make a bunch of terrain shapes with even just a 3x3 mat, like the cheapest mat that you can find. If you cut this one into small shapes for forests or difficult terrain or hills, I think you're set for life for a few tables. And the only thing that I think is sad is there is no hill shapes in the stuff that Mantic is currently selling, and I think they should fix that.
Agreed.
And that also makes me think of a question for Fred about the Epic Dwarfs maps. What do you guys have about the number 2? Because everything is 2 of. What's wrong with 3, man?
Oh, I thought you meant the map number 2.
No. Like
because map number 2 is the infamous cock and balls map.
No, I don't know them so well to
Oh, I know that one. I hate that one.
A good one. Yeah, that's exactly what I meant. Anyway, no, I just mean, like, why are there only 2 forests, 2 hills, 2 walls, 2 impassable?
I think the idea was that if you have that number of terrain, then you could randomize whichever, and it would work with your current terrain collection. So it was just to set like a number, like this is what you need, and if you have that, then it doesn't matter which table you roll. You can use what you have. Is attempt to standardize, I think, just the number. But you can't ask too in-depth questions about it, because those maps were something Lars mixed up in many years ago, and yeah.
Sorry, that was just a cheap dig. Like, why didn't you make it 3 so that we have more full tables? But that's all right. I don't mean it seriously.
I encouraged, myself. I always found that there were too few obstacles on those maps myself. So in my event, I usually add at least 1 obstacle to each map, for instance. So yeah, I mean, there's definitely room to add more to it. So yeah, like maybe 1 round you could add a forest or something, but they're a nice core set at least. So. Yeah, Mike has his hand up.
I just want to jump in and say I love those maps. I use them now for all my tournaments and all my events, simply because they are fairly balanced. They take care of things like you don't have hills in your deployment zones.
Yeah.
And I've run into people that don't use that, and you end up getting that and having somebody with a unit of archers or a war machine on a hill starting turn 1 is never fun for the opponent.
Yeah, you're right.
So except for mat number 2.
Yeah,
that one. When I first saw, that's funny, that's cute. I tend to starting with number 1 when I go through and put my mats out, and it's like, yeah, that's the last mat I want to use. It's not balanced, doesn't work. It's a bad joke.
Yep, it's a bad joke. It was me and Bjorn who made that. It was a tournament that my friend V-Dog had in November 2015, I think, and or maybe it was 2016. Anyway, he said, okay guys, for this round you're gonna make your own tables, and there's a prize for the best table. Don't make anything stupid. And me and Björn looked at each other, and we made the cock and balls map and said, haha, V-Dog, how about this? And he just walked over. He looked at us very sad and disappointed, and he walked away again. Like,
it's like he doesn't know you at all.
And Lars thought that was so funny. He actually added it to the map pack. It's an in joke. It's a taunt to V-Dog, really. Yeah. So yeah. But thanks for your words, Mike. Yeah. What's fun is that that pack was such. I mean, it was a relatively quick thing that Lars made, but it has such quality that it endures even 7 years later. It's still a solid product, and people can say, it's not maybe you want maybe to spice it up somehow, and you can make other more exciting maps, but it's just so solid, and it gets the job done, and it's really fun that it's still and it also cemented those concepts of keeping hills out of the deployment zone, stuff like that. Have as much as the terrain as possible in towards the center of the table, not just don't hide it in the corners, because it will never make a difference if it's there. You need it in the in the killing grounds, so to speak. And this was a conversation that we had a lot with people in the early rules committee, like Nick and Dan, and they were always talking about these things on the on the 4-Foot Snake podcast and stuff like that. So we just did those and put those things into play on the maps because we agreed so much with those. With those rules, So when it's later, it's become, of course, more written in. They put pen to paper and put it in their rules that hills should never be in the deployment zone, for instance. But we just thought that was such a good rule to have that we just put it in our maps anyway. Because you could really get screwed if you put your terrain. You could argue that it's fun to have a map where maybe there's a hill in one of the deployment zones, because then the roll for side becomes more exciting. You know what I mean? That's a discussion to have, of course, if you really want it to be balanced and mirrored at all times, or if you want more skewed maps. I guess that's the next level of that debate, I suppose.
I also wanted to mention where Clements had asked about having pairs of everything. One of the great things that I like about it is you have a set of terrain per table, and you can use them with any of the mats. So I've got a bunch, 6 bins with 4 tables in each of, 8 hills and 8 blocking and 8 obstacles and 8 woods and everything. And it doesn't matter which mat I'm putting them on, which map I'm using it on. I know I always have the right stuff for it, and everyone can always be different than it, because you never know which mat is going to end up with which map.
Yeah, that's great. Clem.
Yeah, no, that's. I just wanted to say, I'm joking about the maps, but they are very useful. And I remember also when starting the game and you don't really know what you're doing, and you just have no idea exactly how to set up a table that actually works and gives you a good gaming experience. And I found this resource, and it was helpful. So nice. I'm joking about it, but definitely I think it helps.
I get it.
Also, I think we forget, but as a new player, you just have no idea how anything is done. And so any resource that really guides your hand, even on some things that might sound trivial for veterans, I think is a very useful tool and actually helps the community. So
that's a good point, Clem. Like if you're starting this game, like how should a table look? Like where should I put my stuff? I suppose just this is how you...
Not just that, also what terrain do I need to build or buy before I can start playing this game?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. Also, I guess I should thank Dash28 for actually hosting those maps now, because that's where they live now, on the Dash28 websites, if anyone are wondering.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Fred, let's at least wait for the Kings of War section, but then maybe we can talk about your website.
No, it's not my website, but Clem, could I ask you, those neoprene mats you talked about, that's news to me. Is that a product Mantic makes now?
Yes, it is. I think you can pre-order them, the current wave, alongside the Terrain Crate 3, and they were part of the Kickstarter, was it 6 months ago? Something like this, earlier in the year, I think.
Really? And, that's interesting.
Yeah, and so I bought, I think, 2 sets of the neoprene shapes, and they're great. I mean, as I said, I think they're a bit small for my taste, but then I realized you can combine them.
Yes. That's a good, because that's actually quite important. Forests and terrain needs to be a certain size, I think, to matter. So if official product makes them slightly too small, that's actually a bit of a problem.
Yeah, the thing is, if you use only 2 of the forest templates on a 6x4, then it's definitely not enough.
Okay.
But if you make 2 forests based on those shapes, so maybe you use 3 or even 4 or 5, then it can work. But I definitely think Mantic should just cut more of these and make a lot more shapes and so on. But anyway.
Yeah, I see. Yeah, that's a good idea. Well, it's cool that they have it. I mean, it's nice to be able to lift stuff off, and but I hope the game doesn't progress too far down the flat terrain slope, though. But
yeah, I agree. I absolutely do not want to see a completely flat table. I mean, not on a tournament or anything like that. but to have absolutely playable terrain is really a good thing. Like last Clash of King, they had amazing terrain. Like it was specifically built to play Kings of War, and it just worked great on every single table. And that's really, that makes a big difference in your experience. Mark, you want to say something?
Oh yeah, I just wanted to jump in and you mentioned going flat with the terrain. What I'm thinking more of is that you have something on top of it that you can lift off. Okay, and you mentioned the lack of hills, and that's one of the things I ran into at Clash that we had some issues with was the hills. So things were balancing here and there. Now Mike Carter's here, so I have to thank Mike for the steps for balancing your units on top of the hills. And I certainly used the heck out of those. And by the way, Mike, I gave a couple of those away while I was in the UK. So there you go. And but if you could remove the hill and put the flat, if the flat's neoprene's right below it and you can just remove the hill to resolve any of those issues without all the balancing and bending and swooping, I think that, that would be something that would interest me. That's something I've been thinking more and more about. And, I've been playing forever. So, and it's just a recent thought of mine seeing all these neoprene mats. So
I think it's the best of all worlds, isn't it? To be honest, if you've got, beautiful 3D trees, beautifully painted, sitting on top of something that is entirely playable, I just feel like that's the best case scenario.
I have to laugh at running tournaments that working at getting trees. I've got a bunch of Mantic trees I want to paint up to replace my railroad trees. Eventually, I'll get my Terrain Crate 3. I kind of felt like when everybody says, I got mine, I felt like Charlie Brown. I got a rock. No, I got a shipping notice finally yesterday in the very last day of shipping. They finally decided to send out my Kickstarter. So I haven't seen any of it yet. But one of the things I'm actually looking at doing is, you got your trees and you beautifully play the trees. And then I see players, before they even start rolling dice, move them off to the side of the board. And I've got trees sitting off to the side of every board there, just using the mats. But one thing I'm actually thinking about doing with it is actually making some pieces for obstacles. Because how many times you want to, you see it there and then you have somebody on it, and even steps don't help with trying to have the who's on the wall, who's not on the wall, who's in front of it. So thinking about having a thin piece of an obstacle in front of it, and then you can take it off when you're moving, when the guys are actually on top of it. I don't like it actually for hills as such, because I actually played years ago in Dragonfall with it, and some of his hills were half an inch high. They were tiny, and we had people in 3 of my games, people were confused on what was a hill and what was difficult terrain just by looking at it, because it was very easy to not be able to tell the difference. So I like having, when I started 3D printing my hills, I made them all 35 millimeters high. And then I made the steps to exactly match them, and have those to give out just as swag for everything I run. And then they are steps you can use with anybody's size hills, but you put them on their side and they exactly match the ones I designed, as if I did that on purpose.
I think there's actually a Song of Ice and Fire little mats, as we were talking about, for all the different terrain types in that game. And if you go on to Thingiverse or something like that, I forget now, you can actually 3D print perfectly fitting, the fences or the walls or whatever to go on top of them, which is really cool. So it's exactly as you just described, Mike, rather, sorry, where when you need to, you can just take the wall away, but it's still completely clear where it was, etc., and it still looks nice.
I think Mark has his hand up.
I do. I will jump in and say obstacles are the thing I don't like the most as far as terrain goes in Kings of War, because you're always laying them down or doing something. So that strip underneath works just the same, like I said, with hills. And you guys just said it. I mean, it just makes it flat. It just makes it a little more utility in the game. And then when you're off of it, put it back. I mean, the 3D terrain is what gives you the immersion into the game. I like to leave the hills on the, mat until a unit goes in there, and then I'll just push them around until it becomes totally unwieldy and the trees got to come off. But I try to work around. I like having the loose trees so you can push around like Mike has. And I know we'll talk more about Origins, Adepticon, and Gen Con in our interview with the Pathfinder. But, you know, I mean, very innovative as far as I'm concerned type stuff for that. But yeah, obstacles, but I don't like obstacles in the game either. I have not mastered how to use them properly yet. So, but that's my fault.
Don't they say obstacles are a path to mastery or something like that? Did anyone on the call ever play War Machine? Because apparently that was a big thing with War Machine, was the game got so competitive.
I never played it, but many did in Oslo, and we always talked about that when we shared tournament space. If you walked into the War Machine room, it would just look so strange because all the tables were completely flat. And we were always talking about, imagine being a new person or like if you're interested in war games, you walk in there like, oh, is this something I want to do? And you see their table or their tournament and it's all flat tables and people staring down onto the tabletop intently. And then you walk into the King's War room and it's like beautiful terrain, hills, forests, buildings. Like, what would you choose? You would probably choose the cool terrain, like, wouldn't you?
I certainly would. Mike, do you want to jump in, buddy?
Yeah, so the flat, looking at that years ago, I remember that Wizards tried to put out a chainmail miniature game. And it came with, this nice, the box sets actually came with cardboard sheets that had the various terrain shapes on them. And then I went to see it at, I think it was at Gen Con, and they had, a World Championship still using those cardboard sheets. And I just felt, we're playing a 3D game here. Having completely flat terrain would be just like of it rather than the 3D unit. It just doesn't quite do it for me.
Yeah, so much of the game is aesthetic for me that, it would break my immersion. Mark?
Yes, Chris?
You've got your hand up.
I do.
Clem?
That wasn't intentional. You can edit this out if you edit, Chris.
I won't edit this out. And you know that.
I doubt that.
Clem?
No, I just wanted to say now I forget because it's too many interruptions. No,
Dear
the
listener,
flat.
if I did edit this, imagine the stuff I take out. Honestly,
Yeah, it would
Imagine
be
how bad
we're
that would
losing
be.
80% of the value of this. No, the flat terrain. I think it is very useful in terms of rules and for practicality of playing. So I would rather have flat terrain than terrain not designed to play Kings of War, because then you just can't use the forest, for example. But in a way, then it's kind of like playing with unpainted miniatures or like zero effort armies. It's like, why are you playing this game? Like, why don't you play a computer game if you don't like painting? And I mean, you don't even have to be good at it. Like as Mark said, like the best color is finished, and that's 100% true, right? But it does look so much better when you have some 3D terrain on the table and painted armies. Doesn't have to be like a crystal brush level. It already looks great, and I think.
But as we kind of touched on, if people aren't excited and care about that stuff, what the heck are they doing playing a tabletop game? Yeah, as you say, play a computer game. Yeah.
This is Ronnie Renton, and you are listening to the Mantic Universe podcast.
Anyway, so Terrain Crate, we're still in Mantic news, right? We haven't moved on at all.
No.
That's correct. We're on topic number 1 of the first thing. So yes, first thing Mantic did.
We missed also a bunch of other news, but where are they? There's also a bunch of cool stuff in the vault. We didn't take any notes, dear listeners, so that's why we're kind of scrambling and even worse than usual. But Chris, what have you read in the emails from Mantic lately?
Very little, if I'm completely honest. Yeah. In terms of Mantic news, the Terrain Crate, we've discussed that. Who wants to jump in and help me out?
I'll jump in for a bit. So let's see. Since we last spoke, I believe the Worms Kickstarter finished. So we're all set with that. Everything.
Did any of us back it out of interest? I didn't.
I did not. Nope.
I did. And I never even played the Worms video game.
So was it just out of loyalty to Mantic that got you to, and just knowing that'll probably be a great game?
Well, loyalty, completeness, because it's have to do every one with it. Because there's only been a couple I've ever not done and later ended up buying everything that they sold in it at a higher price. The only one I don't think that I've ever gotten anything intentionally for was Alessio's chess kind of game. And I think the
Loka.
Yeah, I never did that one and don't regret it, but didn't do the original Dreadball because I don't like sports games. And I've ended up buying everything that they had in there as well at some time. No, it looked good. It looked fun. The sculpts just looked hilarious. So it's one hopefully I'll get a chance to play it a bit with it, but who knows? But it looked good.
Fantastic. Super. Okay, guys, as we're struggling so much with Mantic news, should we move on to the next section?
Well, I'll just toss in one other thing. October 18th, the Twilight Kin models will be released. And I believe the Clash of Kings book will be released on November 6th, even though we'll be discussing that later in the podcast. Now I turn it over to you, Chris.
One other thing.
Thanks, buddy.
One other thing I want to mention, people are paying attention, the Umbrella Academy is actually up for pre-order now for Mantic. So if you want to get in some of the more traditional, and Worms is almost a more of a traditional board game as well. But their Umbrella Academy is scheduled to be shipping here before Christmas, as is the Barroom Brawl, which is the Advent calendar. And that one I'm excited about.
As is hopefully Dungeon Saga Origins as well, hopefully.
Yeah, Kickstarter should ship. And I got 2 copies of the Barroom Brawl. I'm excited about that.
That's
Again,
amateur. I got 5. Because they'll make great prizes for. We have a tournament in December that has a Kringle / Krampus special character you bring with it, and that would be a great prize for one of those at least.
I think there was a Hellboy Krampus at one point as a special character. Cool.
That was a great model too.
Yeah, really cool.
Oh, so was the Hellboy Christmas version. In fact, I'm staring at him on my desk right now. One of the few Hellboys I've actually fully printed up.
It was Hellboy the board game. I really enjoyed that. I've still got so much completely unopened of it, but I really want to get around to playing some more of that. It was such a good game. Okay, so that'll do it, dear listener, for Mantic News. So a section I'm not sure what we'll have to discuss, but that's for us to find out. A Warpath Firefight. So I've painted some sci-fi trees, so I've legitimately done some firefight stuff this month.
For Antares, don't lie.
And also for Gates of Antares, dear listener. But I have read the new book, which I'm very excited to talk about, obviously at another time. It'll be on another episode, dear listener. But other than that, I've got to be honest, I haven't done, I don't have a hobby space at the moment, so it is a bit tricky. I haven't played any firefight. Really looking forward to it, but I haven't managed any. Has anyone else done any firefight this month? Or, in the recent past?
Well, the only thing I've done is read command protocols on the way back from the UK. I got through part of it, but I'm not ready to give a full review or anything like that. I think we'll be doing that a little bit later, but it should be interesting. Mike, did you get a copy of command protocols yet? Or?
Yes, I did. I want to say we just finished up a small escalation firefight league here in the Dayton area. I took the best general for that, for winning all my league games. We then had a final playoff for the last day. It was supposed to be our tournament, but as unfortunately happens sometimes with these, that people start dropping off with it. So there were just 2 of us playing for the final trophy, which actually ended up in a draw, and then Felix Castro actually beat me by killed about 100 more points in our 1,000-point games than I did, so he took home the trophy for that, as well as the best painted army for him, because I never got all my stuff painted up. But command protocols, yes, I've looked at it. Was checking out the Asterians, with the fact that they've now changed it so you can only do a faction order once per round. That is a
thank God.
That's a stealth nerf to my Asterians, because they live or die by their shields, and
that's a great point, Mike.
Plus, they live or die for their shields. Plus, they had the second order that gave them the ability to get us an extra shot for all their no rifles, And looking at everybody else on the same point costs, it seems they'll get 2 shots. You look at enforcers, they're very close to the same profile, and they all have 2 shots, and I get 1 shot on ciphers. So it's hard to bring enough firepower, and it's hard to keep your shields up without those orders, and now only getting those once. That's going to hurt. Now they finally get a heal order, which is nice that they didn't have before. So that will help a little bit on it. But the fact they're fairly fragile they are fragile once the shields go down, that those are not going to be protecting you now. And I think that Asterians have been, you guys did in a previous one that talked about in the UK where they did looked like that the Asterians were the top army there. Well, it's all because of shields, and with those shields down, they're not going to be top anymore because they're going to be too easy to kill.
Oh dear, I like Asterians. Oh dear. And Mike, can you tell us a little bit more about the tournament? So, Escalation League, what points did you start at? How many rounds did you play?
So we basically did 250 a month. So 250, 500, 750, and then we didn't actually have a full round of 1,000. That just ended up being the last day for it. And again, unfortunately, we didn't end up having the tournament. Only had the 2 of us playing for it. The lower point value, the Asterians, especially in the old book, were just first 2 games. The only thing I lost were my weapon drones, which don't have shields, of course. So everybody shot them off the table first thing. Finally, my 3rd game, I actually lost a few units. And then again, the 4th game against Forge Fathers, that was very tough, technically a tie on the last turn, but he did kill a few more points than I did to declare a winner on it.
So how many players did you start with? And did you have a little narrative for it, or was there a little story to go with it? Or
there was no story. I think we started out with 7 players, and one of them I know moved away, unfortunately. The others just kind of gradually dropped off, couldn't make it, etc. with it. So something always seems to come up. I found that these things tend to, as soon as you get past 3 months, especially on any type of these, it's really hard to keep people going on it. I've had that before in fantasy, the same type of escalation type things with it, that they all start off with the low points, lots of people, and then just losing people as they go.
Do you think you still have these kind of 5 or 6 people going forward? Maybe they haven't painted as much as they meant to, but do you think they're still interested in Firefight locally?
There's a few of them are. A lot of them are the same people that play Kings of War. So it seems to mainly be the same group. We do have the person running this is another local guy who I actually don't think he's a Pathfinder, but he likes pushing the sci-fi games with it and stuff. So he wants to do this again, but do it in a much shorter time span, more of a a 1-day escalation type thing with it, games day event on it, and try to get things going. But it's harder to get that community going with us right now. It's how many miniature games can you keep up with and keep playing and keep getting models for? It's a big question.
Yeah, good point, Mike. Clem.
Yeah, I have a theory about slow growth. I think they usually just don't work as expected because they don't solve the main issues that you have when you're trying to paint a full army. And I've realized I prefer a slightly different version of it, where instead of saying you do 250 points a month or something like this, you cut the whole project in phases. And instead, the first phase is everyone chooses their army, builds a list, comes up with test models like a color scheme, or decides how they will do the army. I know you don't believe in test models, Chris, but
test models are for cowards. I'm done.
Yeah, exactly. But anyway, so the first phase is just the planning phase, and then a second phase where everyone just buys everything. And especially for Firefight or Kings of War, it's not that expensive. Like, you don't have to drop a massive amount of money on an army. And so you can actually get everything all at once. And you build as much as you can. And you get to a playable full state army as soon as possible. And then you keep people interested by having games. and then you can paint and get stuff finished later on. But to keep it active, you just start playing as soon as you can. I think that's a good angle. That's what we've done for Kings of War 10 millimeters. I know you love this, Chris. I have to mention it in every pod, otherwise your life is too easy. And it worked great. And then you just actually get a lot of people with an actual army in the end who can play the game. And I think that's the ultimate goal, right? Like have a bigger community and more people playing the game you love.
Yeah, I'm actually super looking forward to Firefight. I was thinking about this earlier, actually. To be honest, I think I'm looking forward to playing some Firefight soon, more than anything else, more than Kings of War, more than Deadzone. So, yeah, I'm really looking forward to playing some Firefight. I think it's a fantastic game.
Yeah, I've played only a total of 2 Firefight games ever, but I have found it very enjoyable. My problem is that there's not a lot of players playing it. It's only basically me and one other guy called Maurits. So I've been painting up slowly Marauders force. I do like my space orcs. And usually I've gone for a very melee focused, like the brawlers with the claws for hands, or not claws for hands, but claws on their hands, I suppose. And just really like close combat list, which is fun. And I suppose we're not going to talk about the new updates for Firefight because we haven't really, at least I haven't seen those. But I've heard that there are some changes that might be a stealth nerf in the same way that Mike Carter spoke about, and that's that there is because before you could actually just walk into combat, couldn't you, and not really suffer any minuses, but I think you get a -1 to hit now if you don't see your target before you walk or charge in, you get a -1 to hit, and that was always good with my close combat Marauders, that they could just run around the building and still be surprisingly effective. But with the -1 to hit, which is perfectly logical, I suppose they will be slightly worse than before, but still probably good.
They're still going to be terrifying, to be honest. Those brawlers are so good, and I love the models as well. I just think those guys look scary. They look like bad news. They're really cool.
They do. And when I saw those, I mean, I'm generally quite loyal to Mantic. I do like to support the company, but I pick my models. I mean, I don't buy everything, but those guys, when they released the new orcs for Firefight, I just purchased a bunch of those because I thought they were so cool, really nice. And they look really like they're up for a fight. The old Marauders for Deadzone, they looked a bit like I don't know, like wild hogs on 2 feet with large rifles. They didn't look like proper fighters, I think. But these new ones, they're really scrappy looking. I love them.
And Fred, you mentioned there's just you and your friend playing, which is a tricky one with Firefighter and any kind of new game. Whereabouts are you guys playing? Are you playing at your house, or are you getting out into a gaming store or a club?
We get out to either the club in my gaming club. Then I will have to bring him on as a guest player, or there's also one other gaming club that we can go to, which is more open and not just members only. So we have the space and the terrain required. I think it's just the interest. It's hard enough to keep niche games going. I mean, there is of course an abundance of people playing 40k, and you get people saying like, "Oh, that looks fun and interesting," but still they might not take the leap to actually start playing Firefight instead of 40k. Even though we would say like, you can use your own models. I mean, use your Space Marines or your Space Orcs or whatever they're called now. Try this other rule set. But in the end, at least I don't have really the energy to be like the prime engine of yet another game. I think I use a lot of my energy keeping Kings of War active, and for Deadzone at least, and also a little bit of Firefight. I just want to play and enjoy it. I can't be the guy with the banner, waving the banner for every game. So I can't.
I completely understand you there, because I'm in the same situation where it's always me having to push things locally. And I always have to be the main cheerleader, and it is exhausting. And as you say, sometimes you just want to roll some dice and have fun.
Mm-hmm, yeah, and I'm perfectly happy doing that for King's War, but for instance, for Deadzone, I hadn't. That's such a great game that I love to play on the side, just because it's so different and so casual. It's so many fun things happen that I always use that game to. I didn't even care if there were just 2 or 3 people playing Deadzone, because that's enough for me to give me a game now and then. It's like I don't need to run a tournament circuit in Deadzone to be happy. I just need a game every now and then. So yeah, need to choose my battles slightly, and although every person that I have played Deadzone with, I didn't want to say demoed, because it's not like I've made a conscious effort to get them playing, but I had friends who don't even play war games and I've had a game of Deadzone here in my house, and they really loved it. So it's a game that really is easy to just enjoy and have fun with people, even though you don't expect them to become a full-fledged wargamer. It's they will like absolutely have a good time with it regardless, because the rules are relatively simple. You know what I mean? So yeah, I love Deadzone, and Firefight. I only had 2 games, so I have a limited supply to speak from. But Deadzone is the bomb.
It's also a pretty good game. I haven't played yet with the updated rules, but even the V1, if we can call it like this, like the one that released a year and a half ago now, is already a ton of potential. We had a ton of fun with it. There were a few quirks here and there, and from what I've seen, they've fixed it with the latest book. So yeah, it's in a really good place.
Yes, you said you've played Firefight V1, or did you mean Deadzone V1?
No, I meant the Firefight. So V1 as in the recent one, right?
Yeah, I see. Yeah.
Because they changed quite a lot between this one and the one that was before, like a few years ago. So It's almost like a completely new game.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, you mean the old one? Yeah. But to be fair, I mean it seems like the new update also is almost like a new edition change, or am I being too dramatic? It seems like
I think it's not that much. No, there were a bunch of changes here and there, but it's more for me and from what I could read, and it's always a bit weird when you just read the book and don't really play more to experience it. But from reading it, they fixed a bunch of the small details that needed fixing, and so I think the rule committee did a lot of work to just gather all the feedback and just go through all of these points and adjust the small details. So I wouldn't call it a new edition. As you mentioned, as Mike mentioned, the ability to only do the faction orders once per round. I always get turns and rounds confused, but you know what I mean. It does make a big difference in how you play it, but for the better. And it's not like a fundamental edition change type of change. But I think they did a great job, and I'm eager to play more with it.
Yeah, I feel like if you only can use each faction order once, it almost feels like I would end up with points to spare at the end of the round. Like when I played, it's never been a problem to use the points. Like I want to use the orders every time I can, but if it's only one per turn for a good order, then it's like, well, what am I going to use the rest of my command points for?
Well, for the faction orders, yes, but then each commander can have special abilities as well that you can also use, and then you can also. I think they also changed the going down thingy that gives like a cover, and you probably, I think you can use points as well to change this in the end round, right? Or
Yeah,
maybe
unpinning units. Yeah,
right.
that's right.
Anyway, I'm getting confused now because it's been too long since I played it. But yeah, I think I want to play a few games with updated rules before I give too much of an opinion about it. But everything that I've seen was interesting so far.
I think Clem's totally right. We need to actually play some games before we pass any judgments. It does, on the face of it, I would say, Mike, it does sound rough with the Asterians with their shields because they so rely on their shields, right? So I was wondering actually maybe if there would be other ways that they could bump up their shields. Maybe, there'd be cool, interesting ways that they could do it, not just using that one command ability. At
the same time, Chris, everyone else has the same limitation, right? So
there actually are some. One, everybody's shield value got bumped up. I know most units have started with shield 4 now, so that's at least one more hit they can take from it. The other one is one of the command abilities. I think it's from the Narsa. Allows everybody's shield generator to go off, which is normally at the end of a round. You roll to try to auto regenerate shields on every unit that has one for 5 points, and you trigger this and you roll it during the middle of the game or middle of the round with it when it is that command option for. It's a large range on it for an instant. So those are a couple of things that help.
And then the other thing I was thinking was, obviously, with the big change of you can only use a command ability once per round or per turn or whatever it is, that might encourage people to bring more leaders and more diverse leaders. So, I'd be really interested to see what these changes mean, because obviously you don't want loads of command points left over at the end of a round. You want to spend them. Fred?
Or also just more diverse armies, because the faction orders, let's say if you have an all shooty army and you can only use if you have a faction order that boosts your shooting, then you can obviously only use it once. Then that makes it a bit bad for the rest of your army.
Great
it's all
point,
shooting.
buddy.
So if you do a more all-round army, you might have like a melee order you want to use, or
bring some Kalishi
speed, like extra speed for someone, or just I guess it encourages more rounded armies, I think, than just having a shooting gallery, for instance.
That sounds
really
really
cool. I think
cool.
it's completely true, and when I played against enforcers, and you guys know I have something against enforcers. They just spammed their one good order, or the one amazing order, and it's kind of like, okay, great, I'm happy you can do that, but actually I'm happy that you can't do that anymore, and now you have to use the other very good orders that are also available. But it also impacts all the armies, like same for my GCPS, like no more recruits blazing away on 6+ every time they shoot, basically, right? Because that's I think they also changed the order to begin with, but I was also a culprit of this order is so good, of course I want to use it anytime that I can.
It's difficult
and I use
not to, though, isn't it? When you know it's so good. And it was the same for me and my armies. Is there just some things that are just so good? So, for example, with the Forge Fathers, if I've got a unit of 10 guys with the rifles, if I could double my attacks, amazing, right? So, this does sound really interesting. I want all the factions to be playable, so I'm a little bit concerned about the Asterians, but we haven't tested it yet, so it'd be interesting to see what the changes mean for the shields actually when the rubber meets the road and we play the game. Awesome. But the more I think about it, the more I really want to play Firefight. Really need to get some games in, and one of the other things, and we will talk about it in the next episode, dear listener, but one of the big changes they've made, and Ronnie's talked about it a lot, is make a new mode of the game, which is more, big battles with more vehicles, so you can have a command tank and things like that. And I think Dreadpath Zone very recently put a video up on YouTube, which is one of the battles, and it just looked like absolute chaos. I mean, everything was blowing up everywhere, and they had a really cool looking table. Looked really, really good. I'm probably less enthusiastic than most people seem to be about this idea of getting loads and loads of vehicles on the board, because I really enjoy Firefight at kind of 750 points. I think it's a great game at that level. But, you know, of course, I'm a maniac and I've got loads of different vehicles for the game, and I'd be very interested to try it. But I love Firefight at small points levels,
So
and I'm sure Mark will be with me.
So you actually have the vehicles then? You just prefer it like infantry only?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of like, to be honest, I very much enjoy a vehicle, maybe a Strider, a couple of different units, couple of different leaders. But having said that, I'd be interested to try it. But yeah, I mean, I normally like a couple of vehicles per side, and you know, some diverse units, basically, I'd say. So maybe one tank per side. But yeah, I've stocked up on vehicles. Clem.
Yeah, I think I agree with you here. I think it'll be fun, like for some gaming weekend, to put tons of vehicles on the table and just go crazy and play almost like you play a siege game in Kings of War. But otherwise, in general, I'm not very optimistic with 28 millimeters tanks on a 6x4. Very quickly, it just becomes too crowded, and it's just a shooting gallery. And so it's cool because you get to put all of your toys on the table, and it's a change from the normal game. But ultimately, I think in 28 million on a 6x4, what you want is the squad level. So some infantry, maybe one or two vehicles, or like one vehicle in a Strider, or maybe one flyer instead, and more, and it becomes too much, I think. But let's see. Let's give it a try next time we play.
Yeah, I mean, I really want us to do, buddy, to be honest, a Mantic Sci-Fi weekend pretty soon. So I'd be really interested to try. But I just think Firefight's a great game at low points levels, to be honest. And I'm sure Mark will agree with me. Right, Mark?
Absolutely. I like them
Yes.
at 500, but I'm going to try 750. People say that's a sweet spot. So, you know, with the new command protocols here, definitely got to give that a whirl.
Yeah, I think it works really well with some of the objectives. So, I mean, I like playing 500 points too, actually. But I mean, some of the most fun objectives, and of course, I can't remember for the life of me what the scenarios are called. But for example, there's the capital H-shaped one with the objectives laid out. I think at 500 points, you don't quite have enough units to hold your backline and challenge your opponents. So I think just 750 points, just having those few extra points, just makes the game a lot more interesting on that scenario specifically.
I agree. I think also on a 6x4, 500 points is not enough. But with 500 points, you can already have an interesting game on a 4x4 and get started with the system. And yeah, I think 750 is a good, is a decent size. And I like also slightly bigger. I haven't had many occasions to play at like 1500 points. But it's also fun because then you can bring more toys and really show off more of your army, more of your models at that size. But yeah, I just need to play more larger games like this. I would like to.
Yeah, I'm just looking forward to playing it, to be honest.
Hey there, I'm Brian.
And I'm Rick.
From Deadzone, the podcast.
And you're listening to Mantic Universe Podcast.
For everything Mantic under the sun.
Off we go to Deadzone.
Yay! Clem, by the way, how is your sci-fi terrain looking? Are you still procrastinating?
So no, now it's looking different because you can't see it because it's in cardboard boxes because I've been moving house a month ago. Well, 3 weeks ago.
So you've been painting your real house, not your imaginary sci-fi house.
Not even that. I should have been, but no, I've done some of it, but there's still more work on the house. We're not exactly camping, but a little bit. We received a fridge last week, so just to tell you how things are.
It's a good start.
It's a good start, yeah.
Dear listener, Clem's moved to the suburbs. So
I did.
He's gone from a small flat in right in the centre of the city to now having to, have enough furniture for a house, which is interesting.
it's a good problem to have. I'm absolutely not complaining, but yes, no, it's been a lot of things to do, and so miniatures have been a bit on the second side of things. So yeah. So no, my Deadzone terrain hasn't been painted. And the fun thing as well is I did miss a Deadzone gaming day in Berlin. So that's pretty bad, but
it's great. One happened and you didn't organize it, so that is just in itself a really good thing, right?
How cool is that? Yes, absolutely. I'm sad that I couldn't make it, but I'm also very happy that the guys organized it. And they've been playing a bunch of Deadzone. Like I see pictures on the Discord, so that's really cool. There's also a Deadzone tournament coming up in November in Regensburg. I think on the 18th. Chris, is that right?
On the 18th, that's correct. Yes. So our friends are organising that, and I hope we can make it. Clem, how are you?
I hope to. I haven't booked anything yet. But I hope I'll manage to open the right box with the Deadzone stuff in it, build a quick list, and go get crushed by players who actually know how to play the game at a tournament, but also have an amazing time with friends over the weekend. So yeah, 18th of November, I think it is.
Last time I did the crushing though, so I've got a difficult decision to make. Do I bring the same thing again, the OP?
But Chris, you did the crushing because you said, hey, it's a narrative thing, please bring nice lists and blah, blah, blah. And then I wrote scenarios especially for you.
Did I not say, though, this one coming up, it's just a narrative. Come on, everybody. It's just a friendly narrative.
Oh, I think they are actually good players, and they are doing an actual tournament.
Oh, no. Lightning won't strike twice. As you said, Clem, I had to rig the load the dice before we started. Fred.
Yeah, I was intrigued about you spoke about a tournament or like a game day of Deadzone, and I always thought that Deadzone is a quite terrain heavy game, if you know what I mean. Like you
very much so.
Yeah. And how do you organize a game day or a tournament in that? How much terrain do you need, and do you feel like you need to spread the terrain a little bit thin to populate several tables, or are you still
great
happy
question,
with
Fred. So we brought what I thought was enough. So we had 10 players, so we had 5 tables. I honestly thought I had enough terrain by myself, ready, painted and ready. But kind of when we got set up, I was really, really glad that we'd asked a few extra people to bring stuff, because so the way Clem and I play is we kind of play with a similar amount of terrain to the Mantic book. Like if you look at the photos in the rule book, that's kind of the amount of terrain we play with. And then the guys who came from Bavaria, who are running this event next month, I asked them to bring some stuff, and they brought these incredible bespoke tables, which were crazy high, just really wacky and wild, tons of terrain. So I'm making this up now, Clem, but I think they probably had, let's say, 3 or 4 times more terrain than ours had.
Wow.
So,
yes,
but it made for wild diversity, so it was fantastic. But I think I completely get what you're saying, Fred, and there is a temptation to kind of eke out the terrain, but if you can avoid that, I think Deadzone is a game that really requires it rules wise, but also there's the spectacle. So if people come and see this incredible terrain that these guys brought, they go, wow, what the heck are you guys playing? It just looks amazing, right?
Yeah,
so there's
absolutely.
and it's important for the rules as well. So you, if possible, and it's only a 2x2, if possible, if you can really stock up on terrain, it does make a huge difference.
Yeah, it does, and that's kind of why I was asking, because the best games I also find it has a lot of terrain, and also preferably not just a second story, but maybe even a third story on the buildings, so you can get
or fifth,
to
Yeah,
I mean, I have
6th or 7th like these guys were. Yeah,
I have a table here in my home that is I think it's actually as high as you can go. I built this sort of bridge, and then on top of the bridge there is a tower. And if you stand on top of that tower, you can't even drop a grenade down because it's too far. You know, so it explodes mid-air or something. That might be pushing it though a bit, but I do love it when it's a bit higher than just if you have let's say if I have like a container that's like a second story. I've played against players who then run up on the container, shoot, and then use dice to move off again, so they can actually move in. They can expose themselves, do their shooting, and then do the extra movement dice to actually hide again. And I find that quite boring. So if you have 2-story height, like third floor height, then you can't do that. You can't do that trick. And that's so I have this pet peeve that I think terrain should be at least to the 3rd story.
I think it's a good point, and just the way we've done it is we just buy more of the not the terrain crates, but like the Deadzone terrain box over time. Like I've used my Pathfinder credits to buy more and just throw it into the terrain pile of the club. Some other members have done the same.
Yeah.
And it's just building more terrain over time. And we started with only having 2 tables. Now we have, I think, 4 sort of that we can equip. And also now a lot more new players have joined. And, these people will buy a starter set or 2 starter sets and then also have some terrain of their own that they can bring.
Yeah, it's really it's a really quality. I mean, I really like that Deadzone terrain from Mantic. It really works well to put together, and you can usually you can actually make it last quite long if you don't use all the walls for one piece. You can just use maybe a half wall on the one side, and then you can how high can I go with using minimal walls for each level, and it's still
definitely
not
tricks.
Also, the game's way more deadly like that. It's really interesting because it's suddenly there's I'm really exposed.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. So I've always been intrigued with the thought of running Deadzone game days and having more people, but I feel like I need to up my terrain level. I need to make more.
Ultimately, yes, but I think the local community that we have here is not very competitive in general, and so. Yeah, it's kind of like step by step, and I think people just enjoy because most of the players come from Kings of War, and so they enjoy. Oh, that's also a different system. And it's really nice, and so it's kind of a change.
Yeah.
And I haven't seen yet, at least in the local group, people trying to exploit. Hey, there's not enough terrain on those tables. Great, it means I can do nasty tricks. Maybe I'll come later, but for now, yes, it's. Very friendly games, I would say. So yeah,
I have a hot tip for terrain though, because as you know, the rules for Deadzone is kind of written that every unit should be in cover. That's kind of how their baseline is, that everything is probably in cover, right?
Correct.
Yeah, and
it's unusual something isn't in cover actually.
Yeah, so a clear shot should be something unusual. So to accomplish that, I have made. I'm not sure what the actual name for it is, but if you've seen, for instance, in Saving Private Ryan, the scene where they land on the beach and they open up the hatches and the soldiers
and
run
the machine
onto the
gun
beach.
has a clear shot straight down.
And along the beach there are these sort of metal bars welded together, like anti-tank. So tanks can't drive there. You know what I mean? Like metal shapes. And anyone getting this reference?
Yeah, I see what you're getting. Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
I am. Yeah, I can't pronounce it, but yeah, they're there for disemboweling landing ships and things like that. So.
Yeah. So I made a lot of those just using spruce, like glue spruce together, paint the metal, and spread on my Deadzone map. I put one of those in almost every corner. Well, every corner that is that doesn't have a building on it, I put either one of those which is just then a little star shape of metal bars, right? Or I make tiny barrels, which I make of cutting this electrician tubing, which is ridged. So if you cut it and paint it metal, it looks like a barrel. And I make sure either one of these is on every single intersection of cubes. So that makes it much more probable that there is some slight cover to be gained on every single cube on the map. Just to make that, so it's hard to get a clear shot.
Anywhere. That sounds really cool. Hey, Fred, if you've got photos, would you mind just sharing them on the Mantic Universe Facebook group, just so we can see what you're looking at? Because that's always super, super helpful. And
sure.
Thanks, buddy. And Mike, have you run any Deadzone events, or what's your relationship with Deadzone?
To be honest, I have not. Deadzone's one of those things that has just slipped under the radar for me. Played a bit in first edition. I remember playing a tiny bit in second. I haven't played any in third. And in fact, that's one of the things I needed to get more space with, and finally gave up the fact that, no, I'm not going to be building demo armies for any of the sci-fi games. I'm just going to play them a little bit. So some of the bins I had set up for Deadzone demos, etc., have kind of gone away with it. So yeah, that's not one I'm in. In fact, my Deadzone book, I basically use it because of the great pictures of weapon references, so you can identify what weapons on what guy with it, because they had a great, here's what this rifle looks like, here's what such and such looks like. I'm like, need that, but nope, not been playing it. Sorry.
Yeah, and Fred touched on it earlier when we were talking about Firefight, and he's like, oh, come on, I'm already the main community driver for one game. There is a point at which it's just too much, right? Because you've got to keep on top of all this. So it's just having another game. Although Deadzone is an amazing one, but we already have so much going on, and then we've real life as well, etc. So very understandable. Super. So do we have any sort of final thoughts for Deadzone? And Fred, feel free to come down to Germany and play Deadzone with us, because it's fantastic.
On the 18th of November, I think it's a good time to do it.
Yeah. Come and join us.
I'll keep an eye out for. I'll put it in my calendar and then check my budget.
Super.
Also, I think those things I made with the spruce is called Panzersperre or something like that.
Yeah, tank traps.
Yeah.
No, Fred, we all completely understood what you were talking about. Yeah. Yeah, and it sounded very cool. Super. Okay, Mark, anything to jump in on?
For Deadzone, my experience is the same as Mike's. I got first edition, so we got in, played a little second, got everything. I haven't gotten third yet. I do have the book, and I've read it and stuff like that, but I'm thinking about picking up a starter set. And so I just heard the Deadzone, the podcast guys, talking about the Styrian versus Plague. And, those are two armies I don't have a lot of models for. So that's pretty cool. So I think I'm going to take a look at picking up that starter set. So
the best thing in that box, Mark, is the Plague General model is so cool. And it's the Rob Burman did a short story. I think we talked about it on the pod, but he did a 2-part short story that's exactly based on that. Is
that the guy in the top hat and
yeah, I wouldn't call it a top hat, but it's quite a
almost
tall kind of general's. Yeah, it's sort of like a US general's kind of cappy.
Yeah, he's amazing.
Super cool, super cool. And a friend of the pod asked for he bought that set and asked for some lists, and I basically just came up with the Asterians from Rob Burman's story, and he immediately noticed and went, hang on a second. But it's such a cool story. It's really, really fantastic.
It's a good story, definitely.
There's a guy who is no spoilers. It's on the Mantic website, dear listener. It's fantastic. Super. Okay. So I think we should move on then to our Panathor Kings of War stuff. Guys, we've been talking a lot, and this is going down a bit of a rabbit hole. My apologies. We've been talking quite a lot about Vanguard recently. And Mike and Fred, I'd be really interested to hear your thoughts on it.
Thoughts on what? Sorry.
On Kings of War Vanguard. I'm just opening up a can of worms and sitting back.
Vanguard. I have played Vanguard. I would say 5 or 6 games maybe. It's always been fun. It's been all right, but we found the rules a bit crunchy and a lot token heavy, as we call it. Like, it requires a lot of housekeeping, putting tokens down, and there is a clue in that one of the tokens is split 3 ways, and it's actually a triple token, which means that someone in Mantic said that the probability of a unit needing 3 tokens at any given time is so high that we'll actually make a triple token for it. That tells you something, I think. Also, we were a bit disappointed locally that we thought it would be like an entry game to King's of War, which, in theory and in lore, sure, I mean, it could be, but physically, like model-wise, it's just not, because King's of War uses units and this uses single models, so it doesn't give a bridge to King's of War, in my opinion. So a bit clunky, fair. Fun enough. I like the feeling of it when you put 2 war bands against each other. You're trying to be sneaky and running around. And I played a scenario which was rescue the princess or something. And it was quite clear that I was going to lose the game because my opponent had the princess tied up to a stake or something, and he just had a lot of crossbowmen. And I had to run in there and somehow defeat all of his guys and rescue the princess and then get out again. And it was clearly impossible, at least very stacked against, in his favor. So I think the scenarios are unbalanced. Also, I played someone called Steal the Dragon Eggs, and I had scouts and he did not. So my guy scouted up, stole the dragon egg, ran back, and I won the game. And that was that. So yeah.
And Clem, you're doing a brilliant job, buddy, of staying in mute. Mike.
So I jumped on this, as I mentioned, not playing in Deadzone. I have a friend that we both run events at Origins, and pretty much we've divided things up. He does the sci-fi, I do fantasy. So I jumped on Vanguard when it came out. I only have 14 warbands that I've used to run Learn to Play events with it. But I think this last year has been the last year I'm going to run that until they come out with a new edition. And basically, Frederick had exactly a lot of things I want to say. Crunchy is a great word to describe it. It fails to me as a lead-in for Kings of War because it doesn't feel anything like Kings of War. It is a completely separate game with it. One of the frustrations I've had is that good models in Vanguard aren't necessarily good models in Kings of War, and vice versa with it. They don't translate as well. The whole thing about you can use the same models and build them up into units. I had to do all new models for this because, of course, I multi-base everything for Kings of War. So except for a few characters, nothing is single-based on it. Had to make new models. So that doesn't translate well. The one thing that I do love about it is at the end of every scenario for Vanguard, which there is no kill scenario in it. Everything is flat out objective based. But they have a tie-in to a later Kings of War game. And I'm almost wanted to see what could you do about tying multiple game systems together in some kind of event where, let's say you had a Armada battle, then then they get on shore, then you have a Vanguard skirmish with them that leads into a full-size Kings of War battle with it.
Completely with you.
That would be a good thing. I'm not sure how to organize that because I don't know anybody that plays all of those and would have everything available to play it.
But Mike, you don't need everyone to play everything, so you could have a gaming weekend or a gaming day. If you've got a couple of Armada players, where they could play the Armada game, which could impact, the Kings of War Ambush game, or the Vanguard game, or the Big Battle, or the Siege. So maybe you could have different players playing different bits, which are lightly linked. I always love that idea.
If we had a big enough community to get that, yeah, that would work. We don't.
Right.
we struggled even since the COVID and the dark times, that we have struggled getting back even as many players as we had before here locally, just on our weekly game nights on it. Once in a while we get people from out of town coming in, and one night we had 10 people for a regular game night, but often we have 2. So trying to get something to do multiple game systems,
right? That's fair. Certainly not at the same
going to
time.
happen.
You're running between the tables. Oh, it's a turn on Armada. Okay, now it's a turn on Vanguard.
Yeah, or just doing one at a time with it, And nobody here plays Vanguard. In fact, I don't get the models out except when I take them to Origins and Gen Con. So I did have a better turnout at Gen Con than I expected for them, but it's just, no, I'm going to stick with Kings and Armada, I think, until they finally decide that we want to come back to this and do a fantasy version of Deadzone for Vanguard.
And I think that's what they need. I don't think that's what's needed.
Hang on, Clem. Hang on. We'll come back to this point. And Mike, sorry, buddy. And whereabouts are you playing, in a gaming club or a store, or whereabouts?
We have a store we meet at on Friday nights.
Fantastic.
Called Epic Loot down in Centerville here. It's a really nice store. They've been real good to us for many years. We hold 2 one-day tournaments there now. One of them coming up in December. In fact, as I mentioned, it has a Christmas theme to it. And that one has actually been sold out for a couple of years now with it, because they did remodel the store a little bit. And unfortunately, when they did, they dropped some of their gaming tables, because as much as we try, we don't have nearly as many players as they do for Magic on Friday nights. So they have a huge section for Magic.
Makes sense.
So they only have 8 tables.
This is Rob Fnuff from the Countercharge Podcast, and you're listening to the Mantic Universe Podcast, the only podcast that has the balls to cover all their games.
Clem, I'm just going to make one point and then hand over to you, buddy. Thank you for being so patient. So the only thing I would say about Vanguard, so I'm someone that's bought the rules and never actually played a game. I completely agree. It seems weird. It's more crunchy than Kings of War. Now Kings of War has Ambush. I feel like it doesn't have to try and pretend to be the gateway game to Kings of War, because we have Kings of War Ambush, which is, so maybe that kind of takes the pressure off Vanguard in one respect, because a lot of us, and I maybe Clem will disagree, but a lot of us are confused. It's more complicated than the mass fantasy game. Oh, this game takes as long to play as Kings of War. So now that Ambush is a thing, I feel like maybe that takes some of the pressure off Vanguard, that it can kind of be its own thing. And sorry, Clem, I'll go on mute now, buddy. You go for it.
No, I think you're absolutely right. So just as a disclaimer, I started playing Vanguard before I played Kings of War. And I thought more about it. I think that probably makes a big difference, because I came across Kings of War during the 2nd edition, but I didn't have any players nearby. And so I played a couple of games with my wife in cardboard tokens to try it out, and thought it's awesome, but didn't find anyone who wanted to play. And I moved to Germany, and then the Vanguard Kickstarter happened. And I don't remember how I got onto that one, but I went full in. And then I started playing this one locally, because there were other people in Berlin who also pledged and bought some Vanguard. And that's how then I joined the already existing Kings of War gaming group locally, and then transferred my Vanguard, Force of the Abyss Warband into a full army, because I liked the models and I was happy with my color scheme. And so I think I have a different experience with Vanguard and Kings of War than most everyone else, especially in this call and in general. Mike, do you want to say something?
Yeah, one of the things that I want to do that Vanguard did right are the new sculpts that they came out with them. Those have been fantastic. Most of those, where they can, have been rolled into regular Kings of War. Some of them now are kind of hard to get with it because of just the way they release. The one thing that they didn't do right, unfortunately, with it, and this was especially true on the Kickstarter, they sent them to be manufactured, and they basically said, at least the way I see this happening, I wasn't there, I didn't participate in it. The way I see it happening, he says, okay, we need to make sure each of these factions has to be built separately and let them go. They didn't tell them that each model needs to be built separately because nobody at the time was thinking about people are going to want to do units of these models. They were concentrating on single models.
Mike, I think you're totally right, and this totally blows my mind. And you can see that Northern Alliance was the first Kings of War army I got, and you can see that attitude all over the way that they're packaged and the way that. And sorry, I'll put myself back on mute. Sorry, Mike, you carry on.
No, you're exactly. That's the thing. Northern Alliance and Night Stalkers were the worst of this because they didn't already have some stuff out for it. So yeah, you couldn't, and it's such that then when they said, okay, we want to do armies of these, yeah, you couldn't get things with it because you had, I don't know if there's a name, I call them spruelets. For each one of these little PVC spruelets you have on there, you had parts from every one of the different models. So there was no way to repackage that to say just do Frostfangs or just do the
half-elf berserkers, for example.
Yes.
Or the Huskals, you couldn't get them separately. Yeah, no, I agree. There was a kind of a packaging mistake, but I think they maybe didn't expect things to work out so well and that people would want those models also for the bigger game later. And I'm not too sure. Or maybe that's how they managed to make it work financially on the manufacturing side. I'm not too sure.
I always thought that if somebody would have, and I always have to take the exception that when Mantic is a tiny company, and maybe they don't have somebody that enough bandwidth to have done this at the time. I think they're paying more attention now to have somebody say, okay, we need to see how your sprues before you manufacture them. Give us a thing of what the parts are so we know that these can be, and the long, looking at more of the long game. I think Vanguard, I don't know if they ever anticipated that going into Kings of War or not. It was in the same universe where we're going to have the same factions and things with it. You still have some of the same issues with Deadzone. There are Deadzone factions that it's going to be very difficult to bring those into Firefight, simply because, I played what little I played in that. I like the Nameless, and a lot of those. Well, how do you do a sprue where every unit in there is something completely different?
Or the Rebs exactly the same.
Rebs exactly the same. How do you make a plastic sprue of that? It's a great idea, but getting it out where you can, mass produce this economically is a tough one. So, they had some things that were real good with it, but anymore Mantic doesn't kill their games. It's still out there. Nothing is being refreshed. There's nothing's being touched on it. Nothing's being looked at it. And it's getting harder and harder to get any of the stuff with it because they're not going to be reprinting any of it.
So I think, Mike, I might be wrong here, and I don't have any inside information, but I get the sense that with Vanguard, Mantic still like the rules. It wasn't quite what they needed it to be at the time, and maybe that's changed since. I feel like I get the impression Mantic are enthusiastic for a second edition. They're just not really sure what direction to go in right now. So I'd be really interested to see what they do. And I mean, if there is a second edition Kickstarter or whatever, I'd be really interested. I would back it if Vanguard came back to Kickstarter. But I'd be interested to see what they do.
It's one I don't even think they would need to go to Kickstarter on it. I think what they should do is get somebody to and I've talked to people that Deadzone seems to be such a good rule set. And it is so, we've refined it a couple of times, and I've heard people have played it, done it as done Vanguard as a fantasy Deadzone. You get rid of some of the weird crunchiness in it. I hate the fact that, if somebody hits me, I can't always hit them back. I hate the fact that there's so many tokens, and what have they done? Are you activated? Are you fatigued? What have you on it? And I think if they made a fantasy Deadzone, and then it's a thing to bring out the more models. And this could be another game. similar to what they've talked about with the new Warpath being redone in a smaller scale. But they could take Vanguard and come out with something that would be much more of a vault only for some of these one-shot little models.
I think one issue with like a fantasy Deadzone is the Deadzone rule set would not work so well if it was mostly melee. I think.
I see you say that, Claire, but I don't agree with you. I think it would work great.
Not so convinced. The other thing is the terrain is not so obvious to build and make sense of. I mean, there are some STLs. What's his name? I forgot his name. I'm so sorry. One of the listeners. Dan? Yes, exactly. Yeah, so it's pretty cool looking, but it doesn't work as well, I think, as any sci-fi game. So I don't know. As I mentioned, I have a different relationship to Vanguard. I love the power dice mechanic. I think that we now also have in Firefight. I think that really is a big thing that differentiates Vanguard from Kings of War. And yes, you're right, they're entirely different games, but I think it is a very interesting, very good game. And yes, you only have maybe 8, 9, 10, 12 models in Vanguard, but it's the same in Kings of War, except instead of just one model, you have a full unit. But how many gaming pieces do you have? Well, it's sort of almost similar. And so to have more complexity with Vanguard doesn't actually shock me. I think it's actually interesting to have something else. But I realize I'm in the minority here.
Individual units having arcs, I find a step too far. Fred?
I think that you made a point about Vanguard. Oh, I'm sorry, Ambush being the new kind of small-scale Kings of War, and I think that is a step in the right direction. That should be the place to focus to if you want to get players into Kings of War. That Ambush is probably the correct course way for that. But I mean, I also agree that Vanguard does have it is its own feeling to have. I think Ronnie Renton once called it the Black Ops of the Kings of War universe, that you have a small team of operatives almost, they have to go in and secure an objective and get out. And it's a cool way to play. But what if you can do that without going sort of across the units of King's War? And I just had an idea that what if you made a Vanguard game where you just use your heroes, because your heroes are all on individual bases. Maybe you could use their profiles and then give them slight tweaks, and so keep the units out of it, because you'll never be able to combine Kings of War and a game like Vanguard anyway. So what if you just scale it up and make it like Hero Hammer, to pardon for using that word, Hero Kings, and same game, just with heroes, and just turn it up to 11, as the Americans would say. What do you say, Mark?
I say that I've thought about that before, and you were heading in the direction I was heading in. Back when I was a GW Outrider, don't kill me. Was it Warhammer 6th edition? We had Warhammer Fantasy Skirmish, and basically it was Warhammer and it was Skirmish. So what's the matter with taking the Kings of War stat lines and, tossing like 3 spearmen on their own individual bases, with a minimum model count? Don't kill me, Mike. You don't got to worry about that. So even with preferred model count, you can still, spare a few guys off of that and put together a little thing. I think the advantage of Vanguard, if you structured it properly to move forward, would be that you paint less models. That would be it. Other than that, I love Ambush. Colin and I played 500 points constantly since first edition. So I like it, but that's the direction I was going to. And those STLs are awesome. They're it's a little weird, but, I think it could work, but that I totally agree with you. Kind of like Mordheim, just using the issues. I'm not a big Vanguard fan. I tried to like it twice. One time I played in the tournament with Mike over at Origins, and I think I don't know. Did anybody play in that one how to learn Vanguard? I think we just sat around and talked the whole time. People were looking at their models going, what the, so.
I can see a Mupp Shorts episode where Clem is showing us Vanguard and trying to get us to enjoy it. Mike.
So it was interesting, as Frederick was mentioning there, about doing something that's just based actually on the Kings of War heroes, because I was thinking that right before he said it, that I think one of the ways to do it is they need to pull back a little bit from your ordinary troops and make this purely elite, even smaller, so it is, possibly monsters and heroes, and you're not even looking at your regular troops on here. Because one of the things you have to look at with it always is that this is a company in the end. Things have to be economical with it, and making individuals that you're only selling one or two of is not economical for them. They've shown that. But you can put them out on the vault, have it out there, and come out with your rule set with it. And that could be something much better. But I think the rule set definitely needs to be worked on. It's just, it doesn't flow well. And for something with only, a handful of models, it's supposed to be the fact that it takes longer to play it than it does a regular Kings of War game. Just
I find it it's great because it means you don't have to paint 150 models and you still have a very deep strategic game. It's just easier to get into it. I don't see it as a bad side. The other thing is I played a Vanguard campaign with our local gaming group with, 8 people. And it was actually very interesting. And to see each fighter in the band progress over the campaign was quite interesting. And that works with the current rules. I'm not sure. I mean, if you go from melee 3 to melee 2 in Kings of War, that makes a big difference. So, yeah, I don't know. I think some of the things wouldn't work. And I think it's a mistake to try to attach it too much to Kings of War from the rules perspective, because as you guys said earlier, ambush is the way to get started with Kings of War. It's perfect for that. It's the same gaming experience, the same core engine, and you don't need to do that again. So I think pushing it more to focus on the heroes maybe could be interesting. Pushing it more to a role-playing game experience, or Mark mentioned, the Mordheim style, where it's the campaign that actually makes it shine. I'm 100% in favor of this. Necromunda is my favorite game ever. Well, not the current edition, I don't like it, but the campaign system I think is very, very interesting from a gaming perspective. But yeah, I think keeping Vanguard is its own thing. Maybe not with the current rule set because it looks like I'm the only one who likes it in the whole world. But not trying to push it into being Deadzone or not trying to push it into being Kings of War.
Actually, Clem, sorry, buddy, I'll interrupt you there. You're definitely not. There is a small but very passionate support for Vanguard. People that like it love it, but a lot of people are confused and put off for the reasons we talked. I mean, what I was just to build on something that Mike mentioned, and I very much agree with, is we pitched on the podcast previously, something that I call Kings of War Champions, and that is basically, and maybe Clem has a point, that we're filling a niche that doesn't exist, right? Because you can play if you want to play Deadzone, go and play Deadzone. Stop bothering me. But my premise was exactly as Mike mentioned. You go to a Kings of War tournament, and on the Friday night beforehand, you take the heroes out of your box, and you just play this basically Deadzone fantasy with your heroes. So you're not buying more models or anything like that. You could have our friend of the pod has designed already some STLs for it that look really cool, of kind of a medieval destroyed city. Looks really, really cool. But you could have Goblin Caves, Dwarf Hold, maybe Mantic give us the STLs, it's part of the vault, something like that. So it might be, I mean, I can't see really where Mantic are making a massive profit, but it could be a cool thing. And as you say, maybe with ambush, maybe there's just no requirement for this, but it's just cool and interesting to talk about. Mark,
I was just going to mention too, if you do something with champions and the heroes and things like that, those cost a little bit more money to buy, and 2, they would sell more of them. So I'm kind of seeing a little mojo here for Kings of War Champions, or just pulling the heroes out of your box. for Kings of War and things like that. Now, you won't use all those heroes when you play in a big Kings of War game, but you'll use a few of them. Absolutely. So,
and we're probably going to say this probably won't be that balanced because we're only taking pre-existing heroes out of your army case and just playing with those. But it feels to me like it might be a low-cost thing for Mantic to do, and it might be super fun, right? Cool. And
yeah, I could see that happen. I mean, I think Vanguard was decently balanced. Some of the things you could abuse a little bit, but it wasn't that crazy. Maybe it's just that the local group wasn't very competitive anyway. But yeah, I don't know. I think there is definitely something to do, like for Fantasy Skirmish in Panithor. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what Mantic actually does in the end.
I do like the scenarios for it, and I love the fact that they turned one of them, Hunt the Giant, has become a Armada scenario with Hunt the Kraken, and it is basically the exact same scenario, just moved from Vanguard to Armada.
Why not? Yeah, I mean, if it's cool, why not? But actually, Clem, interestingly, so I'm all for my own idea of Kings of War champions, obviously, but actually. Now, as I said, now Vanguard doesn't have to be the or should theoretically be the lead-in for Kings of War. I feel like it's got a much more free hand to be whatever the heck it wants to be. So if Mantic went in a direction of, okay, Vanguard is much more, campaign based, it's much more kind of RPG like. Actually, I'd be really interested in that. Lean into the crunchiness and the weirdness and all the rest of it, the campaign stuff. That sounds cool. I mean, I could imagine us having a ton of fun doing that. Mike.
Just be a little careful when you mention Kings of War. Sorry about that. Be a little careful when you mention RPG and Kings of War in the same sentence. Now. I think that's a little sensitive on them.
we lost money on that for sure. Yeah. Do we know, Mike? Do we know really what happened? And maybe we can't talk about this on the podcast, but it seemed like it was a legitimate company with a lot of experience, and it just kind of never delivered to Mantic, right? And didn't seem to be much to save.
That's actually from what I've heard, that they managed to hide the fact that they weren't actually making any progress. So here's a page, same one, and what little tiny previews that they gave them apparently was all they ever produced. I don't know what had happened. What amazed me is that Mantic went and made the Hellboy RPG separately on their own, and that came out just fine with it. It almost seems backward that they farmed out the Kings of War one to another company. I actually did did a demo of it back even right before the Kickstarter or whatever on it at Gen Con many years ago, and I thought it was a fun system. We actually had fun. I'd like to see.
Sorry, Mike, are you talking about Hellboy or Kings of War?
Kings of War.
Right.
I did the Kings of War one with the Tricore system or whatever they had with it right before the Kickstarter came out. It actually worked. I had fun with it. It was a fun little, one-shot campaign we ran. So why couldn't, but when I looked at and saw that Mantic did Hellboy as an RPG, it surprised me that they went to some other company to do their own product going outside, and maybe the people who did Hellboy, if they had a chance, would come back and look at Kings of War again sometime in the future when they have more time.
It will be a tricky one though when Mantic come back to the community and go, "Hey guys, Kings of War RPG, you lost money on that last time. Well, this time, honestly, everything will be brilliant." So I think it will be, and you know what the internet's like, right, Fred?
It'll have to be done like they do have done some other stuff where here's the book, it's done, it's ready. Not a Kickstarter, not anything, just introduce an RPG book like you do so many RPGs.
Great point.
I always found it a bit of a tall order to deliver like a Mantic, like a Kings of War RPG, because the whole point of an RPG system is that you can tweak it to whatever you want, and the game master can do whatever changes he likes to the world and to the background and everything. And there's no reason you couldn't just play with D&D rules and just rewrite everything to be Mantic or Kings of War based. I honestly found the idea of a Mantic RPG to be exaggerated or not needed, and just like if you have a group of people who like to play role-playing games, you could just do it right now, tomorrow, with there's no need for a book of its own, really. It's just my opinion.
Actually, I'd like to see it. You can do it as a D20 campaign supplement or a campaign setting with it. So just use the D20, use the OpenGL license on it, and okay, here's the stats for heroes, monsters, etc. Here's things, and do all of the pieces you need for role playing in Panathor with it. Just the established setting on it, and then have somebody work at adventures.
Yeah. Fred and Mike, what I'm getting from this conversation is you guys are firmly committing to making this happen, right? And us on the pod now, we can have an RPG group that we can make into episodes and content for the dear listener going forward, right? Fred, that's what you're saying?
My point is it's not hard to, I'm not going to commit to that. That's your words, not mine. I'm not admitting to that, Chris.
I might edit that bit out. Mark.
Oh, yes. I lost money on it, too. And I don't know if anybody remembers. Probably not, because nobody mentioned it. We did have an RPG show on Countercharge. I think we did 3 episodes. We had the gentleman, Mark Langworthy, on the episode. I think it was on the 2nd episode that we were going through everything. And from what I understand, he had family illness issues and that were really bad. And that's, he tried to do it, and he did what Mike said. A page here, a page there. We did get some information on a starter kit that we used for 5th edition, also one for the Tricore system, and we did play a couple of games of it. We did get delivered some STLs of some figures, which was cool. And what was I going to say? Oh, and he was supposed to write a novel for Brandon, too. That was supposed to be coming out from Winged Hussar. So it wasn't just a role-playing game that failed. It failed on multiple levels, and it's a real shame that it happened. We were very, very excited about it.
And I think
I like Mike's idea. But I like Mike's idea about, just doing a 5th aid campaign book. I think that's probably all you need. So.
Yeah, definitely. And I think at this point we have to say, if there's illness involved, we have to be a little bit sensitive that these are people and the people's lives, and obviously people's health is much more important than us getting an RPG book. But it was a shame. It didn't happen. I'm really excited about this idea of a Panathor RPG, to be quite honest with you. And I'd love a Warpath RPG too, to be honest.
The thing is, what you need is the background and the names, characters, locations. But if you order a game like that, like make us an RPG for King's War, how do you even know that the game mechanics are good? I had this sense that what if this game comes out and the game mechanics are not great? What if I would prefer I would prefer just standard D&D rules or Pathfinder rules, or you play the games or the role-playing rule sets that you like, and you can't just order a game and expect it to be good or better than what's currently out there. So I just always found it strange, really, to order a RPG game and just assume that it's going to be competitive to what's already out there.
Interesting point. Mike?
Well, and I thought it was interesting that they were doing Tricore and D20 rules at the same time with it. It's like, and I agree, why reinvent the wheel on it? Why build a brand new system for it when instead you can just build a campaign setting and you can use, there's enough stuff out there under the open game license and things, I believe, that you could build without, I don't think you have to do too much even new rules on it if you had to emulate, okay, here we've got all the different races and here's your basic playable classes and things, and tie them all into very close to what's already there. It's a campaign setting and characters, and give a bestiary of the various monsters and bad guys you would fight with it.
So I'm someone that actually I haven't played a like an actual tabletop RPG ever. So I'm very excited to. But I'm someone who's playing a bit of Baldur's Gate 3 when I have the time, which is not often, but still. And I'm finding the randomness of the D20. Okay, there's modifiers, but I'm finding it very frustrating with my playthrough. It seems very arbitrary whether something is really successful or really, catastrophic fail kind of thing. Like, just rolled a 1. It's
something you would hear also from people who have played older D&D editions or the Pathfinder 2nd edition, which is more like advanced D&D, that they don't like the 5th ed rules that the Baldur's Gate 3 is based on, because they also find the D20 too random. And the only thing you can get is the advantage, of course, to roll 2 dice. But in these other game systems, you have more like flatter. You can get several modifiers that make it less random.
This is the only podcast with the balls to do all the games.
Super. So, guys, I don't think we can procrastinate any longer. I think, to be honest, we need to move on to actually talking about the Clash of Kings book. And obviously, the dear listeners listened for 2 hours already without us actually talking about the meat of the episode. So,
it's great. Go buy it and read it.
Yes, please, dear listener.
Absolutely. Okay, next.
Clem, is that your contribution, Clem?
Yeah, that's topic done. Potshot is gone. Titans are unit strength 2. That's stupid, but the rest is great. Buy it and move on.
Right. Let's be a tiny bit more structured than that. So just so the dear listener knows, so Clem, Mark, and myself secured an early access copy. I think Mike, did you as well, but just not read it?
I haven't gone through it. We got one so that people could see some of the list for it, but no pictures, no writing anything down or anything at the tournament last week at Michigan GT.
So the reason I bring this up is I just want the dear listener to know, blame me, blame Mark, and blame Clem, but Mike and Fred are blameless. They've not read it, okay? So leave them alone, bless them.
I'm just excited, really, to hear.
Fantastic. So
beautiful artwork in it.
Twilight Kin is obviously a book that's near and dear to your heart. Yeah, actually, to be honest, that was one of the things I was going to mention, Mike, because of my incredible attention to detail of barely knowing the rules of Kings of War. The book is absolutely beautiful, I think. Absolutely beautiful. Really, really nice photos, really nice layout, lovely artwork. So let's skip ahead. So we're going to come back to the lore in the panel lore section. So we've skipped ahead to the Twilight Kin list that we're just going to have a quick look at. We're just going to go over a few little bits and pieces that jump out to us, obviously with the changes to the other armies. So let's start with
first of all, Soul Flayers haven't changed because they are in the list. So Mike, I'm saying this, but let me double check. Is that even true?
That's the gift that keeps on giving, Mike. So when Clem and I, bless us, when we were young and naive podcasters and we reviewed the Big Red Book, and we didn't, I mean, to be fair to us, we only had about 24 hours to actually pass it, and it's a massive book. But yeah, one of the things we looked up was Soul Flayers, and we didn't notice they went down from speed 10 to speed 8. Which
they are cheaper now. No, they are cheaper in the Twilight Kin list. No, the thing is, it was my army in 2022, I believe, right? Night Stalkers. And so obviously that's the first thing that I looked, because I thought, I know the profiles, right? So if I look through the book on the Night Stalkers, I will detect all the changes, obviously. And then I saw none of them, and they actually changed a few things here and there.
So expectations are low, it's fair to say. So Twilight Kin, so let's talk about, alignment still evil. Army special rules is blood hex. Dark magic infuses the warriors of the Twilight Kin to fight through unimaginable pain. I couldn't say that word. Once per game, after resolving a movement order, a unit carrying a blood hex may increase their defense by 1 until the start of the controlling player's next turn. The blood hex is then destroyed and cannot be used again for the remainder of the game. So you can basically give yourself temporarily +1 defense, and that costs. Let me have a little look.
It depends on the units, right? It depends on the size, but it's usually 5 points. Like it's the 5 points upgrade. I think it's pretty nice because as we've all seen, like a well-placed Bane chant can make a big difference here or there. And so getting +1 defense like this can also change the other way around. So I think it is one of the best 5-point accessory rule, I think. Really. I really like it, especially because the whole army is very low in defense, it's a glass cannon army. So it's a very fitting special rule, I think.
The way I imagine this happening, Clem, is that with the Twilight Kin, you want to be hitting first, right? You don't want to be punched. So I think probably the way this would work is you hit the other army, kill stuff, then you would pop this. So when they fight back, it's less effective. Do you agree with that?
Potentially. I'm just trying to read again when that happens. So that's after resolving a movement order. Yes. I mean, it could also just be a deterrent, right? You have
that too.
chaff somewhere, and you would potentially just get a charge. Boom, you launch the Blood Hex. And then it needs to be a double charge to be sure. Maybe not just against chaff, but against a weaker flank or something. And so I think it could be very interesting. I think it's a great army special rule. Let's just leave it at that. Yeah. What do you guys think?
Definitely so. And then maybe we can just move on to talk a little bit about the army. So elite is still, as you might imagine, still a very prevalent special rule across the army. What's really interesting is, so they've got, in terms of infantry, they've got Corsair Voidwalkers, Corsair Fleet Wardens, which, that all sounds really cool, Bound Reapers. So, that's a little bit of the kind of nightmare stuff that's bound to them. The Void Touched Weaver. But then you've also got quite a lot of heavy infantry. So you've got Void Touch Mutants, Bound Phantoms, Corsair Wranglers. So that's an interesting choice.
I think one thing that is defining the army a bit is there are 3 big categories. And it kind of makes me think of the Mason Labs in Firefight, right. Yeah. Where you can take some Plague elements, you can take some GCPS elements, and then some unique Mason Labs elements. And so here you have something similar, right? You have the more Elf stuff, the more Night Stalker stuff, and the more mutant Elf, in a way, like the Void Touched. Yeah. I think that's kind of what it is. And they all have their own special synergies. And then you need to also play between these 3 facets of the army, choose which one you rely most on, maybe, or figure out how to make those work together. I think it's a very interesting way to build a list. Mike, do you want to say something?
Yeah, one of the things that Kyle Proslinski, who played this for us at the Michigan GT last weekend, and he was going to bring it even if they hadn't released the list to the companion, which they did just last week, a week before he was there. But he was going to do it. He actually painted up some of the pre-release models. There's even some of the models he hasn't gotten yet, even though he works for the company. So he had the list, and we were talking some of it. One of the interesting things to realize is, yes, they have Night Stalker units, but they're not quite the same Night Stalker units. If you notice in each of them, they're missing a special rule.
Yes, they don't have Mind Thirst. Yes.
They don't have Mind Thirst on any of the bound Night Stalkers, so you will need Inspiring with them. A little different there.
No, it is. It is quite interesting. I mean, I haven't wrapped my mind around the rules yet. I haven't built lists for them, but I like that there's a bunch of interesting options. And I need to digest it a bit further before I write lists. But I like what I see. And I mean, it's not really a review of the book, right? But we've seen the models in the flesh in the UK, and they're really, really good models. They're really nice. They look so much better in real life than in the pictures.
I mean,
So-
to be honest, the only reason I haven't ordered the mega bundle on the website, the one-click bundle, is just I don't have a hobby space at the moment. But that will change as soon as the work in the basement is finished and I've got my hobby space back. Because I just think this is such a cool list. It's such a, as we know, I don't know much, but just I love the theme. I love the units. I love the impalers. I love the void skiffs. Just think it's super, super cool, right? And as we've said, you can go down various different routes. You can specialize in things. You can have a balanced list between the different, really nicely meshing themes.
I think it reminds me a bit of the halfling lists, where it can get very tactical actually to build the proper auras and position them in the right spot. Some of the Twilight Kin also have rally, I think, like special characters, if I remember properly. And so I think it could become a very tactical army to play. And I like this. I also like that it doesn't feel like it's too much, like with too many weird rules or special things. It still feels like a Kings of War army.
But it's super themey. So I know we had the Sword of Umbra already on Mikhail, but we've got, the Eye of Valak, the Fell Blades. It's just really, really cool. Mike, sorry, buddy.
No, that's fine. I like they played with a couple of things, and this is not your previous elf army. Except for the Corsairs, there aren't anybody that actually looks like elves in this army. And there's no cavalry. But you've got your Void Touch mutants that are heavy infantry that are pretty much just like cavalry. But they don't have the weakness that cavalry has, say, against phalanx when they're hitting you with it. But they actually have that role that cavalry would have. And they have a very similar stat line to what cavalry has. There is almost no shooting in this. There can be a lot more lightning bolt than you would normally see in things, but really the skiffs are the only of the Twilight Elf units that actually have any shooting, and they have the shooting off their broadsides. And I've heard lots of people talking about this. Nobody's had enough to play it to see, okay, is it real? How exposed are you really exposing your flanks to shoot from the sides instead of the front? But so I like that it's playing with these, lots of different things with it. But for anybody who had the old Twilight Kin, there's not much that, you can even proxy well to go over to it.
Yeah, absolutely right. The Impalers now, they're monstrous infantry. And I've got to be honest, I think they sound absolutely terrifying. So the Horde is 225 points, unit strength 3, 18 attacks, as you might expect, fearless 17. They're speed 5, melee 3s, defense 4, but they've got big shield, crush 1, elite, and wild charge D3. So I think if used correctly, that big shield, fearless.
And they can benefit from a bunch of auras as well.
Yeah,
totally. That's the key element.
Totally. And we obviously we're not going to do this blow for blow, but I really like there's a new named character in there to go with Mikhail. But there's also the Gordrake I just wanted to draw attention to. Just sounds really cool. So it's a height 6, 190 points, Titan. So it's speed 8, melee 3, and defense 5. Unit strength 2, as all Titans are now, and with the new book. And Clem mentioned he didn't like that. I actually think that's kind of cool, but I'm sure Clem knows more than I do. But the Gordrake's got 7 attacks and Crush 2, Fly, Nimble, Strider. And then its special rule, Void Charged Beast. Whenever the unit rolls to hit in melee, it can re-roll 3 of the dice that failed to hit. So it's going to be really consistent. So I think that's really interesting. 190 points, kind of mini dragon, really, with only 7 attacks. But of course, you're going to try and get that in the flank. Speed 8, so it's not just another speed 10 flying thing. To me, that just sounds really cool.
If I can say one thing also that I like about the list is they have a unique rule about spellcasting from the Summoner Crone unit, and that is called Wicked Miasma, which is that practically all of their spells also cause damage. in addition to doing what they also do, like their enthrall or their hex and their weakness and their wind blast also does damage with piercing 1, which is the first time we see in any list. So you can do, and these spells have a longer range than many other damage spells. So
it is pretty cool. Yes.
What is hex is like 30 inches, isn't it, or 36 or something? And you can cast that if you want. If you need a super long range damage spell, you can just throw another spell which is not lightning bolt, but it works in the same way as a lightning bolt. It just has longer range, but maybe fewer dice. So that's very unique and new, and like everything they do causes damage in addition to whatever also it does, mess up with your movements and push you back, pull you in, cast hex. So yeah, that's new.
Actually, since you mentioned hex specifically, that was something on the old hex casters for the Abyssal Dwarves. They liked it when they cast any of their spells that they cause damage with it as well. So yeah, it's good that they have, and hex can also be a great spell. Also, you can shut down their casters and hurt them now.
Exactly.
They used to make the hex casters great with it. So yeah, the heroes on here, there's just I think it's gonna be tough to choose which ones you want.
Because they're very utility. Like either you get a navigator with their auras, or you summon their crones with can cause damage with all their spells. It's like they will always be able to do something in every turn. So yeah, they'd probably be super effective.
Yeah, really cool. And maybe we could just mention as well the formation, the crew of the Heartseeker. So it's 2 troops of Corsair Fleet Wardens and 1 regiment of Impalers. That's interesting, it's regiment. And the Corsair Fleet Wardens amend their nerve to Fearless 12 and attacks to 14. The Impaler Regiment gains the Rallying 1, Corsair's only special rule. So, yeah.
I mean, that's the ambush. That's the ambush box, right?
Which is super cool. Yeah, good point, Clem. Yeah, fantastic.
I've heard they were pushing that all Mantic wants to have the formations tied in the ambush boxes.
I like it.
That is a great idea. Actually,
makes sense,
that's a great idea.
I like the idea. I don't actually like it that it's going to be tied into what they built out of the ambush boxes. If you know what I mean.
You don't think it's going to be competitive enough?
Yeah. Well, I just don't know on it, because it's like so your ambush box, you have Impalers and 20 Corsairs. Well, here they're doing Fleet Wardens. Well, why in my ambush box? Why I may not have wanted to do 2 troops of Fleet Wardens. I may have wanted to do a troop of Voidwalkers and a troop of Fleet Wardens.
Well, you can buy another box of ambush because they're so cheap anyway.
Yeah. So it
bingo, Clem, bingo.
I know I did hear somebody saying that, yeah, it's great, but I don't want troops, I don't want these smaller size of any of these units. I want at least, regiments and a horde of Impalers. So that's the one thing I can see with this formation is, unless, and I have people saying, do you want to go a big MSU list on here with it, where you're going all with small units? So who knows?
And how do you unlock this formation? I mean, they're all troops and stuff. I mean, is that an irregular formation? Do you need unlocks to get these, or is it I can't really see any. I can't see a star on there. Does that mean I can put these in even though there are just troops and large infantry regiments?
I mean, the Fleet Wardens are regular, so it's just you would unlock it like a normal troop. I don't think there's any. There's nothing special about it.
So I need to build my list to be able to fit these in, then, because I would need 3.
I think that's always isn't that always the case with the formations? I think so. I think so. But I think my issue with putting the ambush boxes as formations means there will be no heroes in the formations, and that part might be a bit too constraining in a way. Because I think it was pretty cool. Like some of the formations, it's a bit thematic, where you have one hero, like a specific named hero, and his special buddies, and they have a special rule. If you stick to exclusively the ambush boxes, this kind of goes out.
It's a fair point, Clem. But I could imagine a world in which there are 2 formations in an army, and you have to pick one or something like that. okay, it's more stuff to balance, etc., etc. But there's nothing
No,
to
fair
say
enough.
they can only have one, right? And I think it's fundamentally, I think it's a good idea. But that's an interesting point, Clem. Cool. Do we have and I know, of course, we're not going into this in massive detail. Do we have any other thoughts regarding the Twilight Kin list before we move on to kind of general updates, and we'll come back to the lore? Anything we want to discuss before we move on?
Just wanted to say I'm curious to see what people build with it, because I think it's a list full of options, and as I said earlier, I'm still trying to wrap my mind around it, I'm curious to see lists and see what people come up with it. So
sorry, Clem,
I think it means it's a success, is what I'm saying.
Let's throw out the caveat as well that we're talking about. We need to build some lists. We're rubbish at building lists, right? We're not competitive players. We just play this game for fun, right, Clem? So
talk for yourself.
If you're waiting for the filthy list, we are not the guys to talk to.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just waiting for the good net list to win my next tournament. That's
Mark.
Well, you know what, guys? We will bring on somebody special when we do our full cock 24 review. So we go over the lists and all the changes. We will bring on a special guest.
Ooh, sounds good. So
Exciting.
yes, so let's
Someone smart.
Infinitely smart.
not the podcast. No one smart is allowed on this podcast. You should have known that.
That's not good for our self-esteem, Clem. That's not good. Super. So let's just very quickly, as Mark says, we are going to go over this again with somebody who is more of a sort of a competitive mindset, or more keyed into these things. So let's talk in kind of generalities then. So things we can definitely say is sort of flares are unchanged. No, all Titans are now unit strength 2, and they've removed the pot shot rule, Mark. So we'll be very happy for our Guardian Archers for our Empire of Dust. We also have some new special rules, redeploy, which is very wordy, but let's see how we do. After deployment, and all scout moves have been completed by both players, but before rolling for the first turn, this unit may be picked up and redeployed anywhere in the controlling player's deployment zone. And I'm not going to bother to read the bit that says if you both have redeploy, how to do it. But redeploy, it says it's exactly
it's great.
as you might explain it. You might think it's really cool, right?
Because
really
it existed before in several units, but as unique rules for each entry.
The Cyclops in the Riftforge orcs.
In the Kingdoms of Men also they had something like this, like with the captain.
Yeah, the captain, yeah.
And so I think having it as a general keyword that everyone can use and you clarify it once and for all, I think it's the smart way to go.
Fantastic. Yeah, fantastic.
But for the Potshot being gone, I think.
So
yeah.
What does that mean? Does that mean they can move and fire just as normal units, just with -1s, so they become better? Is that it?
I think so. Yeah. Like most units that had pot shots before just don't have the rule anymore, but they don't have steady aim either. So it means they move and then we'll have a -1 to shoot.
-1.
I think if you looked at the list, I'm not that much of an expert about every army, but I think you had either people with steady aim or people with pot shot. And at some point, pot shot is such a penalty that it means you just don't move and shoot anyway. And so I think it's not that bad of an idea to get rid of it and still hurt you if you want to move and shoot with some of these units, but not to the point where you never ever do it.
I see.
What Potshot replaced, if you go back a little bit, was so many. There were a lot of units that actually had reload on them that weren't artillery.
Reload rule. Yeah.
So it replaced that to say, okay, now you can still do it. And now they said, oh, we need to back off against that anymore. You look at dwarves with their guns or crossbows, and originally they were reload, then they're pot shot. Now they're just normal shooting at -1 when they move.
So it's becoming more and more lenient then.
For this, yes.
Dwarf players rejoice. So
dwarfs also get the ordered march rule, right? Like I think the Northern Alliance guys already had it, and so it basically means you can do one pivot when you go at the double.
That's so good, isn't it? So
Yes.
good.
So
Fantastic.
you're not nimble, so you can't charge with one more pivot, but you gain back a bit of mobility with your dwarfs that are obviously slow because short legs and everything. But I think it's a interesting rule and it works well for the dwarfs. I think the free dwarfs also got bunch of cool stuff.
Guys, the next rule I don't understand: secure position. This unit is considered a scoring unit with a unit strength of 0. So why didn't they just give it unit strength 1? Does it mean that if you're competing against an enemy, so instead of you both have unit strength 1, if you're contesting a point, it means you lose, I guess. But whereas
you can
if you're
carry token, you cannot score, but you can carry tokens, I believe.
Well,
interesting.
Look at it this way, because if you look and see units that have gotten this, a lot of it are artillery pieces to help artillery a little bit. So now they control an area as long as there's nobody at all contesting it because they have no unit strength.
That sounds really cool. I like that a lot. Yeah, perfect.
They could pick up a token, they score, but you get them across the line. Well, they don't do anything. They don't help you there because they have no unit strength. But yeah, the whole idea is okay.
That sounds.
I control an area as long as nobody else is there.
I like that a lot. That makes perfect sense.
So it's called 0, but it's still a positive number, sort of in the
0.5. Let's call it.
Yeah.
Yes.
So yeah. I'm not sure. Can you carry token if you have unit strength 0? Maybe I'm wrong about it. I would need to read the rule again. But I think it's what Mike said.
So are they differentiating between 0 and nothing?
Yeah.
In a way, yes. So you are still unit strength 0, but you do have this capacity, like you are still considered a scoring unit.
So this is like when
Fred, imagine it has unit strength 0.5. So if let's say there's a cannon on a point at the back, if there's no one else there, they're going to score that victory point or whatever, that objective. But if a knucker charges it and gets in, then the knucker has got unit strength 1 and it obviously wins. So it basically means as long as it's not contested, then the cannon or whatever can score the victory point. But the moment anything else of the enemy with unit strength, no matter how small, comes in, the cannon can't. And it makes perfect sense to me. I really like it.
So it's kind of a throwback to 2nd edition then, when the war engines actually had. That's before they even invented the concept of unit strength. I mean, you just counted the number of units, I think, that were in the square or in the area, and war engines could also pick up tokens and all that. So it's a slight return towards the old rule set then, I guess.
Also, when it talks about tokens, it doesn't say anything about unit strength. It says non-scoring units cannot pick up nor carry the loot counters.
All right.
But I wonder if that's deliberate or not, though.
Yes,
that's interesting.
So
I think it is. Yes.
Yeah, so they can you can put your loot counters on them. You can put
I sense an FAQ coming.
Nice. Cool. Mark, do you want to take it away with the amended special rules?
All right. So the amended special rule, we've only got one that got amended. Iron Resolve, of course, with the N inside the parentheses there. If this unit is steady as a result of a nerve test, it regains N points of damage previously suffered to a maximum of 3. If no value is specified, the unit has Iron Resolve 1.
So Chris, question for you, what's the difference with what it was before?
So basically it's getting potentially more powerful, right? So instead of always being 1, it could be...
Yeah, exactly. I suppose some units might be designated a higher number on their stat line.
Exactly. It was already the case. I'm pretty sure Basilians already had Iron Resolve 2 on some units, right?
I'm not sure. I mean, there is Life Leech 2. I'm not sure if there was Iron Resolve 2. There might be. Also, there's an item which adds 1 to it. So you always had the ability to go higher than 1. You could get Iron Resolve 2 if you just bought the item. But I guess this...
Because it was +1.
Exactly, yeah. So, but this opens the door for having Iron Resolve 2 units. I hope they won't make Iron Resolve 3 units. That would be crazy. It's like, don't be stupid enough to shoot at them, because they'll heal back up.
Cool.
Right. Well, the Basileans, their special rule, wasn't it the Aegis fragment? So that gave them extra iron resolve. So
right. Mark, keep reading.
So there you go.
Amended magical artifacts. So Aegis of the Elohi. The unit gains the Iron Resolve +1 special rule. There you go. So it's
now you see why, because you could stack all this stuff together.
And then, so Boots of Levitation, add the infantry and heavy infantry only condition, which I would have thought it had already, but apparently not.
I think you could have a hero on a horse and run around with a speed 8 or speed 9 and still cast spells. But now you can only do it on foot then, I suppose.
Nice.
I used to have my Ironcaster on Great Winged Halfbreed, so he was a Titan, speed 10 flying with the Boots of Levitation, so he could move 20 and cast. Because I want to get that. I want to get that surge off in my Abyssal Dwarves where I needed it. So they nerfed that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because that's a huge difference, isn't it? If you mess up your deployment or something, you can fly 20 and cast a spell, but now you can just run like 10.
Nice. So Alchemist Curse looks like the points have gone up by 10 points at each level. So apparently that was undercosted. And Blizzard, add the following text. If 1 or more points of damage are dealt, the damage enemy unit is given the Frozen special rule, which I very much imagine is a Northern Alliance thing.
Nice.
Super.
I mean, it also means you can deliver Frozen to units across the table, because Blizzard is like range 36 or something.
Yeah.
So you could screw up a charge from across the table if you wanted to.
That's really cool. So
thematically, it really makes sense.
It does, yeah. Blizzard.
Absolutely. So interestingly, so I don't know how much we need to really go over the army specific changes.
I would do that later, I think, right?
Yeah, I think so.
I just wanted to get back quickly to the unit strength of the Titans. I don't like this change. I don't understand even why they did it. Do you guys have an opinion on it?
To up to unit strength 2. Isn't it to try and encourage people to take more Titans? Is the issue that people don't take enough of them, and that if they're only unit strength 1, they're not going to beat a Knucker or something, like a budget equivalent. So, I mean, I'd be interested why you don't like it, Clem, because on the face of it, I actually do like it. You're not going to beat a regiment.
I don't want a regiment to be unit strength 2. You know what I mean? Like, if hordes and regiments also got a bump, then yes, I support it. But like the most powerful regiment, like horde, is unit strength 4. I don't know. I would like to see more actual troops, like infantry, in the game, more than more heroes or more Titans and stuff. So I don't know. I think it makes sense in a way that yes, the Titan has more unit strength than a small monster, or like a small large infantry hero. But that 2 Titans are worth a horde of ceremonial guards. I'm not a big fan of it, is what I'm saying.
And I just wanted to mention, fair enough, buddy, just wanted to mention that the Pharaoh on Royal Chariot, which I took to Clash of Kings, he was already massively overcost. I think he was too expensive for what he did, albeit I just thematically loved it. And he's changed quite a lot. Maybe we'll talk about it next time. But that's one of the things that just jumped out at me, that they've changed the nature of this unit. Nice. So there's loads of lovely artwork in here. Be interested to see what the halfling changes are after their massive wins they've had recently.
There's a bunch of things here and there. I mean, some units have been changed. Also, the Glade Stalkers, the unit strength is now only 2 for the regiment. The Scorch Wings are also a bit more expensive. The Greater Air Elemental also with less attacks now. Like, there are a few changes here and there. And interestingly, for example, the Forces of the Abyss, several of the units are now cheaper. I'm not sure that was really super needed, but why not? I mean, I'll take it. And we could also play the game of trying to figure out which one is the third secret army that will get a revamp, because maybe one of those armies didn't get many changes.
Clem, there. Let's keep that in mind.
One army got no changes. So
which was Mark?
Yes, but they are not making a new plastics proof for them. They already have plastics.
I know, Rackin slaves. So evidently they're perfect.
They're already perfect, yeah.
And then let's move over the changes for the time being. Then we'll park that. So I just wanted to mention, actually, there's specific ambush scenarios in here which I really like. I love that idea, and they are, desperate stand, caravan ambush, surprise at dawn. So it's all kind of the darkest delivers. Is that right? The darkest delvers. There we go. So that's all very, very cool. So as ever, dear listener, we're pushed for time. Is there anything else? Sorry, just before we move on, guys, is there anything else anyone would like to mention?
Yes. So very quickly on the scenarios, there's also scenarios for full-size Kings of War, like the Hold the Line scenario that we played at Clash.
Right.
That I really like is now an official scenario. There's another one, Stockpile, where you have more loot counter, like piles of loot counters, which I think will be quite interesting. It reminds me of Vanguard scenario, actually. But anyway, and I think it actually is nice to see new scenarios kind of joining the game.
Yeah, it keeps things fresh, doesn't it? Mike?
So I wanted to listen and grab a little credit here because I happen to, one of the members of the rules committee is in our local gaming group, and apparently he pushed one of the changes that I like a lot on it. So push is changing to where a unit can only hold one loot counter instead of as many as they like on it. And I've never liked it where you could put them all on, put all three of them over in a unit and I can just keep them out of where you can never get to them. So now you have to spread them out.
I agree. It's a good change.
Do you think, though, that you can still place them on the ground?
Yeah.
Meaning that you can still put the others in front of one unit and then pick them up in turn 1 and 2 and 3, perhaps?
A unit may not hold more than one loot counter for purposes of scoring.
Oh, really? What if they destroy an enemy unit holding counters? Does that mean that you take
can only
away
hold one?
So you take away the incentive almost to destroy enemies holding tokens?
I mean, you can still carry it, but you will only score one. You could carry 3 tokens if you want, but you score just one.
Oh, so you take them away from the enemy, but okay, yeah.
Well, and then you drop it and give it to another unit, or you take it with a unit that doesn't hold one.
Okay, yeah.
But it's not about I drop all 3 of my tokens onto my, regenerating Kraken in the back and never put them in where you can get them.
Yeah,
you've got to spread them out.
Yeah, sure, okay. It becomes a bit strange then. It becomes more valuable if you drop them than when you hold them. It introduces a new mechanic, which might be a bit of a gotcha moment for newer players, if you know what I mean. If you have, let's say you get 3 tokens, and then you have 3 tokens, but you have to drop them and then have someone else pick them up to score them. It seems a bit convoluted.
I mean, let's try it out. I think I agree. Every time I've played push, I've put all the loot counters on just one unit that is kind of my tanky unit. Yeah. And it's a very common strategy. And so to force people to not do that is almost like getting a new scenario in a way, right? So I like it, I think, for this reason.
Yeah.
Well, I like it because I'm one who had originally suggested it.
Fair enough.
Makes sense.
Fantastic.
So what means is if you don't like it, blame Mike.
Exactly. Yes, let's do that. Do we want to talk about the Night Stalker background a little bit? Mark
is the only one of us that's actually read it all the way through. No, he means Twilight Kin.
The Twilight Kin?
I'm getting tired.
Oh, you know what? The Twilight Kin fluff is really good, and it was written by C.L. Werner, so it's definitely worth the read, no doubt about it. And boy, are these boys dark and twisted. So got given the time we are in the pod, I will give it to a little bit in chunks. But the basic thing of it is the one big elven tower that they had got blown up, when they went for the Night Stalkers, or when they tried to go along the ways and they had the all the Celestians split in two and that tower blew up. So what that did was leave this giant crater in the ground, and so that's called the Pit of Despair. So a bunch of the elves, after that happened, they all migrated over to the Pit of Despair, and then the elves that went there, they ended up starting to become the Twilight Kin. So from that point, and then of course they tried surfing the void and doing all that. Go ahead. Question. Yeah.
No, I just wanted to say the Twilight Kin are not the bad elves; they are the sad elves. I thought that was funny because technically it's the elves that went to investigate what happened to the university city, sort of, and that happened to basically be completely blown off to pieces and replaced by a huge crater. Turns out it was teleported into the void, but it's maybe not better than being blown up to pieces. I don't know.
Right.
Anyway.
Oh yeah. So the emo elves. So it makes sense that they're dark. So, but yeah. So they did that, and I'm just glossing over the story here. So
the other thing that I
want
found
you to
cool,
get the book.
Yes, yes. The other thing that I found cool. Sorry to interrupt, Mark, but is how they transformed into being like really merciless elves, like torturing people and so on, is because of the Night Stalkers, kind of as a protection, because when they were going into the void, they realized that there were entities that were trying to suck their brains out, basically, sort of. I'm summarizing. And having slaves around that would be sucked out instead of the elves, they realized was quite helpful. And also, if they are not a strong mind themselves, then they would be attacked by the Night Stalkers. And so torturing others and torturing between themselves to really have a strong mind was their strategy to still be safe in the void, which so I thought was twisted.
I know we're struggling for time, but let's just bring it back for a second. So there was this big thing that became, there was this bad thing that happened. It became the Pit of Despair. Some perfectly normal, nice elves went to investigate to see what happened of their nice university town. How did they go from that to, being in the void and, turning to evil?
Well, that's they had their mages over there, and then there was what is her name? They had a leader over there who was Leith Inder. She was one of the leaders over there, and evidently underneath one of the big lakes in the middle, there was a gemstone, and inside the gemstone was a void spawn, which was a creature that was the fusion of the last Celestian trying to cross into Panathor, and one of the primordial entities that inhabits the nexus of all dimensions. And so they went to this to try to get the last of the information that they couldn't steal from the other elves. Okay. And I skipped a part there, but I want you to read the book, but so they went to her, and they decided that, well, the best thing to do is talk to this void spawn. So they put like 20 mages on these nice silken couches and stuff like that. And they went to commune with this thing. And of course they all turned black and, got destroyed by the entity because their minds weren't strong enough. And then this lady went down there and tried to commune with the thing, and she made it. And she came out more twisted than she was, but that's how they figured out how to use the void. So, and then they came up with all this other stuff, with trying to protect their void skiffs and the night ships and all that kind of stuff. So they have a leader, this Lethinder, that they follow. So she's the Dark Prophetess.
So she's the new special character in the army list?
I don't think so. No, she's like a much stronger
superhero. Yeah.
Yeah, she's not in the army.
She's too good for stats.
The other cool thing I think is Mickey was a good guy initially.
Oh yeah, this is the best part of the story for me. So yeah,
But I
Mikael
almost
was a
want to
good
say,
guy.
almost want to say no spoiler because I didn't read everything from after that. So I stopped. Was pressed for time. But when I was reading it, Mickey was just like a zealous worker that was unheard by his bosses. And it was pretty cool. And so now I want to read the end of the story to figure out how he became the big badass head of the bad guys.
I tell you what, Clem, let's all read this and then have another crack at it for the next episode.
Oh yeah, I mean, I give you the big drift of it, but you got to read it. I mean, it's really good. So Mikael gets transferred. The interesting thing is, I personally reading all this, the Dark Elves have the Dark Conclave and Dark Elves Twilight Kin. And so, they're more like a cult. You know what I mean? They're like a cult. So.
Oh yeah, that's right. They're kind of hidden from the rest of the world, right?
Right.
Like for a very long time, no one suspects that there's actually bad elves in the area.
Oh, that sounds really cool. I like that.
Yes.
Nice.
Oh yeah, they're kind sneaking around.
Yes. That was pretty cool the way it was described and so on. Yeah, I liked it.
Oh yeah. And then they got that, and then of course all the elves had to band together against a big bad guy. It could have come from one of Clem's armies, but and it's very interesting. They even got the War with Winter in there, saying that the Twilight Kin benefited from the end of the War with Winter when everybody else suffered from it. So. Yeah, it's pretty cool. There's some good artwork in there. There's some artwork that's, but
I like the artwork a lot. Like the illustrations in this book are pretty cool.
Yeah,
I like it too. Yeah,
absolutely. Even Morgoth gets mentioned in this book. So
yeah, there's a picture
cool.
of him I noticed. Yeah, nice. It all ties in.
The biggest thing is though, there are a lot of different references to things that we don't know about that I grabbed through there. And that's what keeps me think that, Ronnie is, planning a new army as opposed to a refresh. So, because there's so much stuff that we don't know about, like Ophidia gets mentioned a lot. And so I know Matt Gilbert was working on Ophidians a long time ago. But maybe that'll happen. What did they say? Yeah, they also Mantica's mentioned like 3 times through there, and I believe it's the continent is Mantica and the world is Panathor. Is that right, Mike?
Yeah, that is correct. Yeah.
Yes.
So,
sorry, Mike, go for it, buddy.
I was going to say, here's this one sentence or this one little paragraph here. The Twilight Kin established emissaries in the courts of the distant east, studying the mystic knowledge in Xiran. Xiryan and Yamaruto, Yamatero. You can get me for my poor pronunciation. And exploring the ruins of Kong and the Mughael, Mughaal. Even probing into the secrets of the infernal fractures that had opened in these lands. In the farthest reaches of the underworld, they encountered the malignant Murlocs, a breed of bestial dwarf-like beings whose profane technology defied every magic known to the elves. Well, there you go. You just named like 4 armies that, 4 or 5 armies right there in just that little paragraph there. So that was the fascinating thing, was hearing it. And the one thing that we did hear while we were at Mantic headquarters for Clash was expect the world to expand. So that's one of the neat things is finding all the clues, reading through the fluff and things like that, and letting your mind kind of go, where's it going to go from there?
Very cool. And sorry, dear listener, I feel really sad we're kind of pushed for time on this because this is just fantastic. But I just wanted, Fred, you're obviously a big Twilight Kin fan. Is there? I know it's a bit tricky because we're going over it quite quickly, but is there anything there that really chimes with you, or is there anything that's changed to your knowledge since the previous edition of the army?
Well, I mean, the original fluff for the Twilight Kin were kind of tied into the Night Stalkers, really. And I always was a big fan of the story of how the Night Stalkers came to be. And it was the same, Mark touched upon it, the split of the Fenulian mirror when the elves got sort of sucked into another dimension, which was always said to be how the Night Stalkers were created. But in Second Ed, that was like the narrative was like that they all got turned into monstrosities, like horrors, really. But now it's sort of changed slightly into that. No, they did not become horrors. They actually, some of them were able to keep some of their elfness also, and keep their minds to a certain degree, and rally to not just become these twisted nightmare creatures. And I always liked that, and I always hoped for that to be the case of the fluff, that there would be some elf identity still in the minds of their leaders and stuff like that. And it seemed like that's how it's become more of now, and I really love that. I never really loved the fact that these elves got just changed into these horrors. Seemed like a wasted opportunity for me. So I much prefer this version where they have much more identity, and they have their minds more intact, basically, through this whole dimensional rift thing.
Yeah, so they're not just gribbly monsters going about doing whatever gribbly monsters do. There's intellect there and intelligence, and
yeah,
the rest of it. Yeah, really interesting. Okay, super. So if everybody's happy, I think we should just do listener questions quickly, and then call it a show. So
there you go. All right, so Chris, I'll read the question. Yeah, let me read the questions out.
Yeah, please.
All right, and then we'll keep her moving here. But Steve Evans asks, what should I do once I've finished painting my 28th army? So, Chris?
Well, I mean, there's no way he's done everything, right? So let's say, for example, let's say Trident Realm. I don't think he's done all the different unit types. So, I think that's the perfect point for him to come back again and just go over all the armies again, fill in the gaps. There's no way he's completed Kings of War. He's just getting started.
I mean, I have also heard about this game called Firefight, and there are even less factions in Firefight, so it can run through them probably faster than needed for Kings of War, but that's an option too.
There you go. Mike, do you have any?
Yeah,
Mike,
you start your 29th army.
That's what I was going to say.
See, and what you do is you do like I've done back in my Warhammer days. I liked orcs and goblins. I have two different orc and goblin armies with two different themes, two different things. I can't mix them because of the way they're painted. It wouldn't make any sense. So yeah, I have two separate orc and goblin armies. So geez, with 28 factions out there, that's at least 56 armies you could have.
There you go. Mike is throwing the gauntlet down, Steve. There you go. Fred, any advice for Steve before we move on?
Yeah, I would suggest giving a couple of the armies away to players, so you get more local players having Kings of War armies, and then you can make a new one.
There you go. That's fantastic advice.
Yeah, so I think what we're saying is we don't even know why what Steve's bragging about. He's only just getting started,
All right, next one. John Paul Fuller Jackson. What's everyone's favorite cheese, both in Kings of War and on a cracker? We'll go around the horn again here. So, Chris, you're up first.
Well, on a cracker, it would be, I can't get it since Brexit, but red Leicester cheese, actually. But failing that, I would go for cheddar. But very patriotic cheeses. In terms of cheese in Kings of War, I mean, to be honest, that's not really us, is it? I do like the Guardian Archer shooters for my EOD. I don't know how cheesy it is, but
Shobik is cheesy.
Shobik, oh, good point. Yeah, Shobik. Yeah. Although the way I play is he quite often dies. People say Shobik, he's unkillable. Not the way I play. But yeah, I'll move on to the next person.
There you go. Clem, you're up next.
Favorite cheese? I mean, the stinkier, the better. And on a cracker, well, no, that was a bad joke. Yeah, like blue cheese. Blue cheese I like. Yeah, I mean, for all the shit that I've given to Scorch Wings, someone pointed out to me at Clash, well, you do have 4 regiments in your lists. And that's true. I do have 4 regiments of Scorch Wings in my Salamanders list. So yeah, I think that's it for me.
So you're going to challenge Rashad for the Master of Cheese title then, huh?
Potentially. I mean, it's only 4 regiments, so it's fine. And I didn't even intend it to be so good, like, because I sacrifice them pretty early usually, so I don't play them so well, I think. So it's all right. It's not cheese when you play poorly.
There you go. All right, Mike, you're up next.
Well, I think on a cracker, probably just a good beer cheese because it's that time of year. And in the game, well, it's I mean, it has to be one of the rat units. So I would say the Kryza's Gore Impaler. The fact that you have a chariot that can overrun into a second unit after it destroys a unit. For a list that nobody likes, that's a great unit.
There you go. Hey, there's people that play that, so Mark Cunningham plays. Yeah. So not too bad. Fred, how about you?
So I rarely eat cheese on a cracker, but I suppose if I had to, it would be brie. But usually I like blue cheese if it's mixed with like in a salad or something. But my favorite cheese would have to be a Parmigiano from Italy. When it comes from Kings of War, I think I would choose in the Under Army the Death Pack. They have stealthy, so I would call them my stealth cheese.
There you go. All right.
What about you, Mark?
Nice. And for me, let's see. I'm going to say I like Asiago cheese, so I don't get to eat it very often, so I will get it because nobody else in the family likes it. And then on the tabletop, I don't know. I don't think too much about it as far as cheesy lists go. And I don't know if I ran into one playing at Clash, except for Shobek, because I played him in the first game. Chris's Shobek, that is. So I'll just say Shobek so we can move on. So, all right, next question. Tom King. Oh, Tom King's got 2 questions coming up. Let's see, Tom. What effect do you think the release of the Old World will have on Kings of War? This is a Mupp short all to its own. So
yeah,
it will take players away or cross. Yeah, that's sorry, Tom, you're getting them up short on that one. So, yeah.
No, surely that's a good thing. It's because really stretch it out and go into the details. So
you could get this esteemed panel back together to talk about that. So, all right, let's see, Tom. Also, what do you rate as the best Mantic faction in terms of miniature quality, and why is it goblins? So, Chris?
He has a beautiful goblins army. It really does. I totally get why he's saying that. I mean, the quality, in my opinion, the quality of Mantic models is just going up and up and up and up. Having seen the new Twilight Kin models in the plastic flesh, I would definitely say they're the best currently. And, maybe in 6 months when I'm not saying that. I'll pass it over to you guys to discuss.
I agree. Maybe the ogres, I think, because the ogres for me were the first sprue where I thought, okay, now they're really going somewhere. Like it was really an upgrade from everything else I've done before.
And was it the first one done in Poland, the ogres?
Yes, it was.
I think so. Yes,
yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
So for me, that's on the actual miniatures, like the result on the quality of the skulls and everything. Goblins are pretty nice, although I don't like the trolls. Remove the trolls and then I could support goblins because goblins are the best in general. But yeah, anyway.
There you go, Mike.
Well, I would say don't remove the trolls, use the halfling trolls because they did leg day at the gym where the goblin trolls didn't.
That is true.
But I would say that the best army right now for quality is going to be Twilight Kin until the new Trident Realm stuff comes out here next.
All right, Fred.
Yeah, I think also Twilight Kin, Night Stalkers, but also he has a point about goblins though, because I bought that War for the Holds starter set a couple years ago, and both the goblins and the Ratkin I think were really nice to paint, and so I do like the new goblins as well, and the new halflings too. It's starting to increase the quality now, so I can mention several armies really in one breath.
Well, you took my answer there, Fred. I was going to say anything that was produced in Poland. So this new partnership they have is really paying dividends. The models are just really nice coming out of there. So I think we've had Ogres, Night Stalkers, and now Twilight King come out of Poland, and very, very nice. So,
cool. The detail is just crisper, isn't it?
It's just and you don't lose it along the side. That's the big thing. It's like, if you look like at the Rift Forged Orcs and stuff, you got that beautiful detail, and you get to the side, and it's kind of like, there's a mold line, and and even on the goblins and the Ratkin, the side of the model is just not as crisp as it should be. So I think that's where it falls down a little bit. All right, Erasmusberg. Oh, go ahead, Mike.
Just want to mention my only thing that I don't like about the new stuff coming out of Poland is I find it hard to find the parts for models that go together. They just seem to be randomly throughout the sprue. So I spent a lot of time just trying to find this arm, this head, this whatever to go with this body part with it. Be nice if they had some slightly better organization on it.
Is that a point for Mantic rather than the factory? I would guess we need to complain to Ronnie about it.
Yeah, no, that is specifically been addressed, and it's because when the plastic is injected in the mold, it's got to reach all of the different parts at the same time. So they have to really craft the mold so that the plastic moves through the mold properly. So the one thing that it lets us just continue, and it lets Mike continue, are his excellent assembly instructions over there on until someone loses an eye. So
it's true. Isn't there also markings on the sprue now? So it also helps a bit. But I think it is a design for manufacturing issue, and so I don't think Mantic has much to say about it initially. And the guys in Poland probably take all of the bits and move them around on the computer to create the sprue that will work well for injection. But maybe the Mantic could send a memo and, hey, could you please keep this bit and this bit and this bit close to each other? And I'm sure that could also work. That's a good point.
Because some of them I don't see why they couldn't be close. They're, almost, it's a hand with a sword on it. So why can't you have it next, the A hand with a sword go next to the A body instead of somewhere else on it?
So there you go, Ronnie.
Not having things all in separate areas where you used to have all the heads together, all the arms together, etc. I can understand that for manufacturing, but still, when you look at this and think, okay, why is this arm over here instead of right next to it where there's one that's almost like it?
There you go. All right.
I would just say though, Mantic have been doing so well recently. These are the level of complaints we now have. That this would be really nice, but it's very much a nice to have. Super.
There you
Fantastic.
go. Well, we've got one more question from Mr. Berger, and this is actually a nice way to wrap up the show. Would be nice to hear your thoughts on the obvious question, actually. What do you think about the new Twilight Kin? And we'll go around the horn. So, Chris.
I think they're an incredibly cool army. I think it fits in really well with what Mantic are trying to do. I think it feels like, again, a step up to the last thing they rolled out. It just feels like they're really focused. Everything's pulling together nicely. The models, the rules, the lore, it all seems, not that I read the lore, apologies dear listener, but everything they're doing, they have a singular vision for this, and it feels focused and really, really on point. The quality is just so high, and I'm really, really impressed.
Nice, Clem.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about it already in the pod earlier. I think I agree with what Chris said as well just now. I like to see a really Mantic army, like their own take on the trope, and they've done something nice with it. And at this stage, I wish they had a second wave of them coming because I like the style. And but it's also cool that they can build on top of the already existing Night Stalker sprues. So now you have a lot of plastic for this army. But so I think it's a really well designed army, and I like to see it solidly Mantic, solidly in Panithor, and with cool models that I wanna assemble and paint. So I think it's a success.
Beautiful, Michael.
Well, the fact they're pushing this out with 4 different plastic sprues simultaneously is just amazing on it. Not only that, but they're also embracing the vault where the assassin is going to be available in the vault only with it. So they're going for something pretty much for everybody. And in fact, when I was talking to Kyle Przlinski, I think that there's going to be more stuff coming out in the vault so that the entire range is going to be covered with brand new models on it.
Wow. All right, Fred.
I like the army. The models are good and the rules are good, and I like that they have options now for many of the units. You can tweak them slightly. You can buy some of the units like either bare bones, or you can give them one of 3 upgrades to tweak your army. You can go like +1 melee, or you can go the +1 defense, 1 turn only. So I like that they have introduced that option to give players much more agency to tweak their units. The use of auras is lovely. I really like that part. You can move around your heroes, put your auras where you need them. Yeah, nice, flexible army, good models. Thumbs up.
There you go. For myself, it's interesting. It's got some little bits of innovation in there. Hoping we don't stray into too difficult of territory, but from what I also understand is that this list is more balanced against the other lists in the Clash of Kings 24 with all the unit adjustments and everything, which is good because it came out in the same book as those armies. So that is very, very cool. And I got to like them because, I sat down with Ronnie and made my order at Clash of Kings on the pre-order before I left when I was visiting. And so I've got a lot of them coming, so I better like them. But I think it's going to be fun. The models are great. We saw them in person. We were not allowed to take pictures or anything, but they're much better looking in person than they are in the photos. Really amazing stuff. So, all right. Well, it has been an episode for the ages. We're coming up on almost 4 hours, kids. So,
Mark,
it's been great.
You missed a question. We could close in one word each. Like what's your best guess for the yet to be released army next year?
Oh, I don't see that, but okay, go ahead. Let's do that.
Yeah, let's say goodbye to everyone and wrap up with this, and everyone makes a prediction.
There you go. We'll say goodbye around the horn. Okay, Chris.
I'm going to stick with Sylvan Kin.
There you go. Clem.
I think your map short episode convinced me that there's something around herd and forces of nature.
There you go. Michael.
Ophidians.
Oh, that's a new army. I know. After reading this book, I thought the same thing. So, but very good, Fred.
I didn't even catch the question. What was the question, Clem? The most changed army for next year?
No. Ronnie announced that they will redo 3 armies in 24.
Oh,
the first one is the Trident Realm that we already know.
Yeah.
We know the next one is Forces of the Abyss, although we don't know exactly what they will bring in or do in plastic. And
which army would be
the third army. And the only thing he said was it's an army that Mantic does not do plastics for yet.
Oh, shit. Oh, it's hard. I wish the answer was normal elves, but it's probably not. So
you could stick to elves and say you wish it was elves.
That's my answer. Redo your elves. That would be great. Thank you.
That's a fair answer.
There you go. And my answer, thank you, Clem, I have deduced from my analysis, as long as it's not a new army. If it's a new army, I'm going with Ophidians with Michael. If it is a redo of a current Mantic army, I am going to say it's the herd. So we'll see how it goes. So if you want to hear a little bit more on that, go back and listen to the Mup Short. It's the episode before this one, and you can listen to Gad and I go over all the armies and put our guesses together. So it's a very interesting episode. So, all right, sounds good. Well, Chris, do you want to take us out?
Yeah, first I just want to say thank you ever so much, guys, for joining us. And this has been, even for us, this has been a very long episode. So both Mike and Fred, I'm really looking forward to just having you back to talk about those big topics we didn't get to discuss today. So we'll get around to it, dear listener. We've got more content to come. Get in touch with us if you're interested in helping us make MUP content. That would be fantastic for MUP shorts. But I just want to say thank you, guys. Thank you, dear listener, for listening all the way to the end. You know, everyone that listens this far is you're our real fans.
You're the real hero.
You're the real hero. So thank you, guys.
Great. Thanks,
had
guys.
a great time. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.